Chapter 239 The Summer Queen 4. The canyons that surrounded the large fortress continued to explode and eventually became flat plains. But even that was going below sea level because of the fight between 81 Eyes and the One-Horned tribe. There was no time to think about who you were fighting in that chaos. You had to kill whoever was in front of you, and be careful not to be swept away from the magic power storm. It was a mess. Everyone was only focused on defeating the other. The rulers of the tower, the Red Dragon, and the strongest group, the One-Horned tribe. The most powerful people within the tower were fighting against each other, but it wasn't elegant at all. Rather, only killing intent oozed from the battlefield. Meanwhile, red portals continued to open above them. They were the forces that came running when they heard the news. The 81 Eyes and other Red Dragon members appealed with their skills, and warriors from the One-Horned tribe came down to show off the Mugon they had been training. Quack quack wong. The fight spread out endlessly in the outer space. There were 9 people who stood out the most. The 9 Dragon Sons. They were the Dragon Soldiers, with Waltz and Tom at the center, who had received the Summer Queen's blood. Baihe, Waltz, Immune, Chimmy, Cory, Wales, Fian, Trigger, Liho, Hyel, Gongbok, Lisu, Asia, Baradan, Giamai, San, Chodo, Tom, Tien. Chodo used to be the beginning, but with these other names its meaning is currently unclear. Their names will be kept like this until we get more information about them. They were known as the Guardians who protected the Summer Queen. Other than Tom and Baradan, they didn't show themselves in public very often. Even the oldest, Waltz, only showed her face in official meetings. But now, they simultaneously revealed themselves. Rower, the second, Chimmy, was surrounded by light, then suddenly grew to 10 times his size, becoming a large fanged wyvern. His 30-meter-long body was like a snake. The entire body shined with black scales, and toxic fumes spread from his mouth. It was similar to a common lower-level draconic species, but it looked a lot fiercer. A dragon fear equivalent to the Summer Queen's was boiling in the atmosphere. You parasites, who are trying to hurt Mother. Die. Chimmy opened his mouth agape and breathed out. The ground melted wherever his breath touched, and a black fog swallowed everything up. While the One-Horned tribe members attempted to run away, the fourth, Fian, attacked. With a body that was similar to a drake's, he was a 4-legged creature of 5 meters. Every time he attacked, things crumbled down. Quack quack wong. The third, Wales, looked like a sea serpent and slithered above the ground. The fifth, who turned into a frost wyrm, dug into the ground and popped out, obsessively following those who were slow to move. The wyvern-like Lisu, the amphither Baradan, and the lindworm San. Technically speaking, the 9 Dragon Sons were evolved fanged wyverns created with different knowledge of magic and alchemy. But even if they were fanged wyverns, they had the Summer Queen's outstanding components, so it wasn't an exaggeration to say they had surpassed the limits of fanged wyverns to be reborn into a new draconic species. They could even use powers that weren't allowed to the lower-level draconic species. Dragon fear boiled, and breath scratched the ground. In their declared domains, they were kings. Of them, the oldest, Waltz, stood out the most. With her dragon wings, tails, and scales, Waltz flicked out the blood mine of the head elder and closed the distance between them. The head elder snorted. She was challenging someone even the martial king hesitated to spar with. Waltz's movements seemed foolish to him. He could see all kinds of magic circles spinning on her lithe arms and legs, but there would be limits to them. However, pang, the head elder whipped his head around from the cold feeling he felt. The powers that Waltz used barely missed him and barreled towards the sky. Quang, the sound of the explosion. Far away, he could see a hole in the atmosphere and the scattering clouds. But it wasn't the force that surprised the head elder. It was Waltz's movements, the way she used her fists. They were definitely Jingik and Jinsagyang. Something that only experts could do. And the power that was released. 100 fists. It was Mugong, and that something was in the gold-level archives within the One-Horned tribe. It wasn't something that just anyone could see. But the dragon human in front of him used it. There were traces of it being tweaked, but the original form was still there. The head elder's face hardened. How does a player of the Red Dragon know the legacy of our tribe? Waltz just moved her left arm under the head elder's solar plexus, like she didn't care about what he was saying. The head elder gathered the blood mine in his veins. Quang, blood mine and her Mugong clashed together, and the two of them were pushed back. Waltz stepped on Jingik again, stretching her fist out. A foggy aura came from her arm and spread like a flower in front of her. There were tens of flowers that were made like that. The flowers made of whirlwinds and strong chi lashed out towards the head elder in spark. The blood mine around the head elder scattered and planted itself on the ground. One flower per attack. Each blood mine was powerful in itself, and it was enough to dissolve the flowers. His strong chi shook the ground. If there was a difference between the strong chi between the two, it was that the head elder raised his destructive power through careful research, but Waltz made up for what she lacked with her magic power. A magic power of this magnitude. The head elder was silent. Even he wasn't able to cultivate that much. How was such a person able to do that? Unless she stole the dragon heart. The Mugong that Waltz was using definitely wasn't something that she just skimmed over. It was a power that she had learned from researching it for a long time. I heard that Ismenios was wary of our king. But is this the result of that? However, that didn't answer all his questions. Even if the Summer Queen's draconic eyes were outstanding, she couldn't completely steal Mugong like that. Even if she could mimic it, it was impossible to copy its exact forms. Unless she saw it herself. Waltz just blew her flowers in the breeze like she didn't have any reason to answer, and she attempted to approach him. It was a Mugong attack like the 100 Fists, but it felt more synchronized than the original. Waltz added on different kinds of magic to this. From her legs, head, arms, wrists, and fists, magic circles soared up with fancy effects giving her different buffs, and her dragon's authorities was added on top of that. It was a combination of magic and Mugong. The Summer Queen used this method to try to defeat the Martial King. If the Mugong that made up the Martial King and the magic of a draconic species were combined, she would reach a higher level of mastery. The result of her research was Waltz. Waltz had completely met the Summer Queen's expectations. Rumble. The evidence of this was that she could somewhat stand on equal footing with the head elder. However, the head elder saw through the Summer Queen's thoughts and snickered. He could see someone's reflection in Waltz. Yin Wu. That guy also tried to use Mugong while learning magic at the same time. His passion was so great that the head elder was able to see the younger Martial King in him. Waltz's patterns were like Yin Wu's patterns. From her Mugong, magic, and dragon body. They were too similar. However, if someone asked him if Waltz and Yin Wu were similar, the head elder would reply like this. Definitely not. Also, if they asked the reason why, this is how he would respond. She's too rushed. The combination of the Martial King and the Summer Queen. An unbelievable attempt was in front of him. The Martial King had created a new field of martial arts, and the Summer Queen was at the peak of the magic world. The paths and fields they were in were different. But if the two were combined, it wasn't possible. However, Waltz proved this wrong. She imitated the Martial King's Mugong and utilized the Summer Queen's magic. All the head elder could think was that she tried her best at achieving the impossible. But Yin Wu was different. Chapter 240.1 The Summer Queen 5. Team. HH, Thursdays, Yahiko. In the beginning, Yin Wu also tried to stack up as many skills as possible. However, he set up his own domain and used what he learned as a foundation. He was moving along his own path. It was enough for the head elder to feel astonished. Yin Wu's accomplishments were well formed. Even if Waltz was ahead of Yin Wu right now, it was obvious what would happen if they were at the same level. And because he compared her to Yin Wu, the head elder was able to answer his own questions about Waltz. Kung. The head elder blocked Waltz's fist. The sound of something exploding rang out. With a calm gaze, he glowered at Waltz, who was trying to attack him again. You're from the One-Horned tribe. Right. Whose child are you? Sweck. But Waltz didn't answer. Magic gathered around her again for another attack. Quang, quang, quang. The ground shook, and the sound pierced through the atmosphere. If you don't answer. The head elder blocked and avoided Waltz's fist, ending up right behind her. There's nothing I can do except beat you up until you answer properly. Krn. Blood mine fell from the sky. Less than heaven breaking blood mine greater than. The skill that had an arrogant name of breaking the heavens fell on top of Waltz, and just when she attempted to shield herself. Arg. A loud shout rang from the sky, and a large shadow came quickly to her. The head elder and Waltz turned their gazes and quickly moved away. The thing that came flying over was a dragon. The Summer Queen. The Martial King had blown the Summer Queen away, who was as large as a mountain. That crazy bastard. The head elder, who had been fighting in a serious manner until now, crumpled his face and cursed. Quang. But his curse was buried by the sound of the explosion. Like a catapult that was used to throw stones, the Summer Queen shot up to the sky and let out a horrible cry when she came back to the ground. Krrrr. The Summer Queen was only able to stop after she knocked down a few canyons. Hee. The Martial King wiped his brow with a proud face. He looked like a farmer who had finished harvesting his plants. The head elder, Waltz, the 9 dragon sons, and the 81 eyes. All of them froze and gaped at the Summer Queen. Rumbly, the canyons around her couldn't take it and crumbled on top of her. The large dragon body was buried under rubble. Ha ha ha. Phew, that's our king. His strength is really something. How's that? See, I still got it. Should I make Fant and Adora their 74th little sibling while I'm at it? Haha, that's a good idea. Yeah, what a man. The warriors who had a similar temperament to the Martial King all slapped their knees with laughter. The Martial King could feel his children shaking their heads at him, but he continued to joke, not caring what they thought. While he did, the pile of stones shifted. A dragon fear that was enough to shake the atmosphere came pouring out. I'll kill you. A voice filled with fury rang out. With a boom, the Summer Queen showed herself again. She glared at the Martial King with fiery eyes, wings spread apart. She began to squeeze out the power from her soul. Her level decreased rapidly, but that didn't matter anymore. I'll kill you, Nayu. Her head was filled with thoughts of swallowing the Martial King. Along with her powerful will, the endless world of night began to shake. It became nauseating, and a few players almost barfed. However, the Martial King just snickered with a broad smile. Yeah, that's what I said, Ismanios. From earlier. He clenched his fists and veins popped out. And above that, 8 different energies of different colors flowed up. Less than 8 trigrams greater than. It was the result of training one's 8 extreme fists to the extreme. If the peak of the head elder's research was blood mine, the Martial King's was 8 trigrams. Each of the energies around him was extremely condensed. If he used Mugong with the 8 trigrams, the energy would sweep away his surroundings. The person who'll punch Alpharon's annoying face. Let's see which of us that is. Kwong, Swek. The Martial King flew forward and attacked. It was one of the 8 writings of divination that Yan Wu knew, but it definitely wasn't a level that he had seen before. There was a crack where the Summer Queen flew off from. With the sound of intense rumbling, a large hole appeared in the center of the mountain. The mountain came crumbling down with tons of rocks, and the Summer Queen spewed her breath from atop. Swoosh! Hot hell-like fire instantly heated up the outer space. The Martial King didn't avoid it. He held his hands up and twisted them to the side. A long fault line appeared. The space above it twisted, and the breath disappeared futilely. No, even the space behind it was completely twisted. Clouds split, and the sky opened. Then, the sun broke into pieces. Countless sparks poured from above, and darkness instantly descended upon them. When the sun found its position itself and the world became brighter, the Martial King and the Summer Queen were fighting in the sky. The Summer Queen used magic again and again. Magic circles appeared all around her. It was all great magic above 8 circles. Blizzard, Inferno Hell, Meteor Strike, Power Ward of Kill. Each of them would be disastrous to the stage if they fell, and the Martial King just broke them apart with his bare hands. But even then, he didn't stop. The 8 trigrams swirling around the Martial King each did their job. Heaven, earth, wind, fire, water, lightning, all kinds of properties broke the magic, and Kwong, they coalesced at one point. Magic and 8 trigrams collided, then exploded. Krrrng, the fire covered the entire outer space. The endless world of night turned into a world filled with only light and heat. The fight of the 2 who were at the top of the 9 kings wasn't just a simple fight between players anymore. It was a disaster. But the Martial King and the Summer Queen continued fighting like they weren't finished. The Martial King brought his fists in towards his own body. Another large storm was created with him at the center. 2 different writings of divinations tried to combine as one. It was something he had only theorized about but never attempted. He might have hurt himself, but the Martial King was happy. He could do what he would never have dared to do in the village. Once the beast that he had kept suppressed after becoming one of the 9 kings was opened, he couldn't stop himself anymore. Just when he was about to crush the Summer Queen's head. Die, Summer Queen. An outsider suddenly came into their fight. Ione ran between the 2 of them while he had been secretly watching. Who's this bastard? The Martial King frowned. His exhilaration vanished like it was never there. He hated being bothered when he was focused on something, and he only felt better after flipping the intruder around. However, Ione was also in a rush. That life. I will. Ione felt like he would never feel at ease if he didn't pay the red dragon back for making him into this pitiful state. He was humiliated by Tom, who was much younger than him, at the Kellett auction house, and just when he thought the tablet was his, he was suddenly met with an unexpected incident. As the head of a great family, having only received respect and admiration all his life, it was a humiliation that he couldn't let go of. Also, everyone from the Elohim who had come here with him was dead. If he returned to the Elohim like this, he would just be a backroom Senate member and die pathetically like the rest of the Senate. As the head of the family of life, one of the pillars of the Elohim, he couldn't let his family fall apart like that. It was something that could never happen. He wouldn't be able to look at his ancestors in the eye when he died. But there was something that Ione was confident about that allowed him to do this. Nebro, a child he had given everything for. They weren't related, but he had still given him his territory. He was basically a shadow of Ione. If he wanted to let that child walk the path he had left to him, no, to let him fly free, he had to sacrifice himself here. He could pay back his debt to the Senate with this and restore their family's honor. He couldn't be an obstacle in his child's path. Quack quack wong. Blue light surrounded Ione and thousands of arrows fell above the Summer Queen's head. Less than light of disasters greater than. The Protogonoi species were originally gods but fell to the earth after having their status taken away. However, they still had some holiness left, and they could use it by splitting their existence apart. Ione could momentarily use the holy power that he had, and like a candle that was brightest just before it went out, he was able to use the power of gods at this moment. If the head of a family split himself apart, how powerful would that be? The thousands of arrows that came from splitting Ione apart pierced the Summer Queen's body. Sorry, the chapters are split, guys. This was back when I was doing it on my phone because my computer was broken, and it was taking too long for me to translate it. I know it doesn't feel like 2 chapters TT. Chapter 240.2 The Summer Queen 5. You dare. And with this chance, the other rankers began to use their skills. The apostles used their powers, the lords used their curses, and others their signature skills. All kinds of effects exploded, and the Summer Queen was the target of it all. Quack quack wong. Just when she was about to spew her breath, the Martial King released 2 writings of divination that he had saved at the same time. The strong energy that split the sun and pierced the moon cut the Summer Queen's leather wings, and there was a deep cut from her shoulder to her stomach. Crunch. A tremendous amount of blood poured down on the floor like rain. Scales scattered down. Ka. The breath scattered and hit innocent rankers. And, quang, the Martial King landed on the Summer Queen's back. The Summer Queen folded into a V, and fell down. Crunch. The Summer Queen experienced the pain of her spine and back being crushed. The Martial King didn't stop there, twisting the Summer Queen's cut wings and arm muscles. Crunch. Her scales cracked and her skin split like a turtle's back. Her dragon scales, leather, muscles, veins, and bones. It was a body that could even resist adamantium. However, she easily collapsed against the Martial King's power. Even under that immense pain, the Summer Queen twisted her body midair. The breath that came from her gaping mouth covered the Martial King. It was a power equivalent to hellfire. The Martial King's skin boiled, but he just laughed like he was having the time of his life and tore off her wings. Ha ha ha, boom, he buried the Summer Queen in the ground. Her side was scratched as a deep crater was dug into the earth. The Summer Queen and the Martial King were completely submerged under the rubble. Krrrr. The Summer Queen's body was covered with small and large injuries all over, and her wings were plucked off. Blood dripped from her and flooded the ground. The Summer Queen just grimaced and spewed her breath again, like she intended to see the end of the Martial King no matter what. The Martial King also stumbled over his steps, having received some damage, but he raised his fists above him again. Energy exploded around him. The blades of light of all kinds of properties split the breath. Quack quack wong. The storm that didn't seem like it would end lashed around the outer space once again. Mon. Stir. Atran watched the Martial King and Summer Queen's fight from far away with a blank face. Then, he muttered to himself. Attacking a monster like that? Crazy bastard. He was cursing himself. When the auction had been ruined because of the Summer Queen, he spent all his life savings coming here. At first, he was confident. The Ice King, twice, Black Skull. They were all the top S-class mercenaries, and guilds like Iron Lion and Moon Shadow stood behind him. He even met unexpected people like Jang and Turn. He didn't say it out loud, but he thought he could cut off at least one arm of the red dragon. He thought he would be able to confidently say that he would not go down easily. But with the situation like this, he realized how foolish he was. An arm? No. It was hard to even take out a finger. He couldn't even dream of approaching the Summer Queen. Just now, some of the rankers who were swept away by breath included Black Skull. He had stepped up saying he would pull out one of the Summer Queen's toenails, but he didn't even leave a corpse behind when he died. These players were called rankers, but in front of the Summer Queen, they were nothing. That monster became an even greater monster. Haha, amazing, even though I worked so hard. The Ice King chuckled next to Atran. He was an old geezer who had kept talking to himself throughout the entire journey. Unlike the other mercenaries who ran away because of the Martial King and the Summer Queen, the Ice King, Twice, and Turn, were doing their duty next to him. They flicked away the flying pieces and moved Atran safely to somewhere he wouldn't be touched by the attack. They wanted to take the gate and leave this outer space, but the path was blocked by the Martial King and the Summer Queen. Atran glanced at the Ice King. He remembered how the Ice King's life went downhill after being defeated by the Martial King. On the other hand, the Martial King became well known after defeating him, making a fancy debut. Doesn't he feel anything? Most people would have felt discomfort, but the Ice King was enjoying the fight as if he found a new toy. The same went for Twice and Turn. They were grinning crazily like how the Ice King was, but they seemed to be surprised and deep in thought while watching the fight. The emotion in all their eyes were the same. Passion. Respect. Admiration. They're all crazy. These bastards are all. Atran felt like his entire body was itching because of them. They were all psychos he couldn't understand. That was why he decided that he needed to get a grip on himself. It was easy to die in places filled with psychos like this. They might be smiling about how dying while enjoying a fight was the joy of life, but to Atran, his life was more important than anything. To make a comeback, he first needed to survive. He looked around to find the person who was the most normal here, after him. Jang. He was silent, but he knew how to observe the situation coldly. He was here just a moment ago. Now, he was suddenly gone. Where is he? Pat. Jiang Wei quickly began to run around the empty battlefield. His destination was where the Martial King and the Summer Queen were. It was also where the damned One-Horn tribe was fighting, not knowing their place. It was easy to see just with a glance. Even while most rankers were swept away by the breath, the Martial King was powerful enough to tear off the Summer Queen's wings. Amazing. Jiang Wei laughed coldly. His eyes were flashing with joy. They were the eyes of a hunter who was after his prey. He knew that the Martial King was strong when he was being chased by him. However, he didn't know exactly how strong. Now that he knew, his heart beat faster. And now, he didn't have to worry about being bothered. His prey was clashing with his other prey. Though both their backs were exposed, neither thought that someone was after them. No, they couldn't have. That was the advantage of beasts. They knew how strong they were, so they were lost in arrogance, believing that they were the best and that nothing could touch them. Not knowing how dangerous that was. But such prey was there. If he could plant his arrow into that large prey and cut their necks with his knife, how great would his joy be? It's like, he remembered a memory that he had left behind on Earth. Like the chief, feeling the thrill down to the end of his fingertips, he paused. Talk, less than stealth stalking greater than. Borrowing the skill of Hui that allowed him to secretly follow an enemy, he arrived in a shaded place. It wasn't exposed to the outside, and it had a perfect view. Jiang Wei lifted his 4 directions and slowly pulled it back. Far away, his target was soaring up high in the sky again. He was so far that it just seemed like a dot, but his 2 eyes were clearly on the Martial King. If he let go of the string, his arrow of light would land in the Martial King's back. Looking forward to that feeling, he licked his lips. But, what is that? Just when he was about to let go, he paused unintentionally. Thump, 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 his heart beat faster, his breathing rate increased. His heart had beaten faster when he was after the Martial King, but that was from expectation and exhilaration. This was different. His back felt cold, he shivered, he felt like someone put their hand in his body. He felt anxious. It was an emotion he never felt after stepping foot in the tower. It was an emotion felt by instinct. On Earth, Jiang Wei had the talent of quickly knowing when he was in danger. Jiang Wei was able to realize the feeling of his life in danger. That was how he was able to survive in the hell of Africa. Using that talent, he was able to become the bow god. That emotion had returned. There was something around him. He whipped his head to the side. At the edge of his vision, he could see a man standing on a hill. There was a man with a black outfit and mask. Cain. It was his original target, the hoarder. Although it was clearly his first time seeing him, his heart didn't calm down. No, rather, it happily beat faster. Thump, thump, thump. Jiang Wei crumpled his face and glared at him. Who are you? Chapter 241 The Summer Queen 6. Team. HH, Thursdays, Yahiko. 90%. That was a load of bullshit. Yin Wu snorted at himself for thinking that if the Martial King helped him, he would be able to catch the Summer Queen. Help? Who? The Martial King? It was the opposite. Rather, it would be a relief if Yin Wu wasn't a nuisance. Even though she was injured, the Summer Queen was still the Summer Queen. She was the last dragon, as well as the absolute ruler of the tower for the last 1,000 years. Catching someone like that was a load of bullshit. Even if he joined the Martial King and the Summer Queen's fight, he would be injured in the fight of beasts. But still, Yin Wu was a bit envious. That fight is supposed to be my fight. The Martial King had stepped up to help his disciple. It was because he knew how foolish his disciple was. That was why he stepped up instead of Yin Wu, and he was walking the dangerous path with his life at stake. Despite being in this situation, Yin Wu didn't like the Martial King's help, and he just felt extremely competitive at that moment. However, he didn't hide these thoughts. He also wanted to join in on that fight. It was just a 1% chance, not 10%, but he was confident he could end the Summer Queen. Even if the Summer Queen roared and used her power, she couldn't compare to Agaras, who had made the entire stage go dark, or Hermes, who had eaten up a demon. Furthermore, the Summer Queen was someone who ripped an arm away from his brother's body. He had to pay her back for that. Poisoning by devil poison, that wasn't enough to satisfy him. Opening square bracket ... Yeah, that's it. Very good. RMMMM. The powers of a full member of the draconic species were equivalent to a god's, and fighting against a god or demon was insane. Still, Yin Wu had blown a punch to Agaras. So why couldn't he do it now? Opening square bracket ... Quick, your prey is there, isn't it? Just then, the philosopher's stone vibrated. It whispered sweetly in his ear from his heart. Usually, it didn't move much, but it always activated in times like this. It was obviously a trick to lead him into danger, but... so we can see eye to eye sometimes. Yin Wu smirked. Although it was only the remnants of the demonism of Agaras, it was still a part of his personality. Yin Wu stretched his hand out midair. You have chosen the reward, opening of Intrenian. You can earn 5 items from what is on the list. What will you choose? Reward list. Feng Wang's egg. Prometheus's fire. King's festival. They were the rewards from the quest that the Summer Queen had given him. Even though the important treasures were taken, all the items on the list were still outstanding. Of those, there was something Yin Wu wanted. As he chose his rewards, he had a thought. Breaking the Summer Queen's head with a reward she gave me. I'm curious what kind of face she'll make. He could see his teacher jumping up and down in anger because he bothered them. Well, he'll just take it as his disciple being cute. Since a disciple takes after their teacher. Convincing himself with nonsense. Ring. The last attack. Yin Wu lifted the items he touched. Goes to whoever can do it. You have chosen the Yaltabao safe as your reward. Opening square bracket ... Safe. The voice of the demonism cracked. Yaltabao safe. Category. Miscellaneous. Rank. A+. Summary. A safe that the mysterious merchant Yaltabao created. It's much fewer than most safes, but it's popular because of its conductivity for magic power. Where was he going to use this? The demonism wanted to scream. However, regardless of what it thought, Yin Wu chose the same reward again. You have chosen the Yaltabao safe as your reward. You have chosen the Yaltabao safe as your reward. Yaltabao safe. It was a priceless item in the tower. It was also used as a type of currency inside the tower. It was true that it was a rare item to get. However, it definitely fell short for a reward for a quest that the Red Dragon gave. He chose things like this instead of Feng Wang's egg or Prometheus's fire. The demonism shouted furiously. Opening square bracket ... What are you doing? Just what? Fun things. Yin Wu grinned. And also, he was able to be sure of one thing. The demonism was another form of him, but it couldn't read his mind. It was clear it wasn't able to see what he was doing. If it was a method that the demonism couldn't guess, then it was a sure way. Opening square bracket ... Sure, I'm sure you'll do well. I can even look forward to it. That dragon, you have to get it in your hands. The demonism muttered unsatisfactorily, then disappeared, licking his lips. Every time it saw the Summer Queen, it looked forward to how she would taste. Also, it was the last dragon in the tower. It would be a delicacy. Although I won't do what you want me to. Yi Yanwu smirked at the demonism and collected all the Yaltabao safes. Obviously, he wouldn't be able to crush the Summer Queen to death using the safes. He used blink to get to somewhere he had found with his extrasensory perception. It was a place separated from the battlefield. What's this? Atran jumped in surprise when Yi Yanwu suddenly popped up in front of him. The Ice King and Twice reflectively pulled their swords out, but they were flicked away by a wall they couldn't see. It was a barrier Boo had activated inside a shadow. Suddenly, the Ice King and Twice's eyes widened. They had swung their swords in a rush, but it couldn't have been deflected this easily. A word flashed in their heads. Danger. But they didn't attack the unknown person. They had never seen him, but they immediately recognized who it was. There was only one person with a black mask skilled enough to attack them. The Hoarder. You, how did you? Atran hid behind. Turn, thinking that Red Dragon had sent an assassin, and his eyes widened when he saw Yi Yanwu. It's been a while. When Yi Yanwu greeted him, Atran's eyes enlarged, then narrowed again. Yeah, it was you, shit, so that's what happened. When Atran heard Yi Yanwu's voice, he realized what had happened. Yi Yanwu grinned. You catch on quickly. That's what I do. Shit, I was scammed by a player again. Atran cursed. It was his rule to also speak politely to others, but he became super angry seeing Yi Yanwu. The sudden appearance of Yi Yanwu. A voice he heard from somewhere. A familiar attitude. He wasn't a fool. He ground his teeth thinking of what happened in the tutorial. This time, Yi Yanwu had completely pushed him to the edge. Why did you come here now, of all times? To mock me, or to look at a bankrupt merchant? The Ice King and Twice looked amusedly at Atran and Yi Yanwu. They didn't know what their relationship was, but it was funny that only Atran had enmity towards Yi Yanwu. The Atran they knew wasn't someone whose poker face fell apart that easily. Turn, put his sword back into his sheath and moved aside. But still loyal to his duty, he continued to observe Yi Yanwu. His gaze was sharp. Let's talk later. Nocturne. No, should I call you brother? Turn. The Martial King's second disciple glared at him and shook his head, as if he were telling him to do whatever he wanted. Yi Yanwu looked at Nocturne calmly. The second disciple who had left the Martial King, saying it wasn't the path for him. He was the same as the shadow he saw on the 21st floor. He didn't know that he would see him here. Also, even the Ice King was next to Atran. He didn't know the mercenary who lost to the Martial King would be here. To think that all these skilled players had been hired. Chapter 242 The Summer Queen 7. Even if you gave an absurd amount of money, high-class mercenaries had to be interested in the job to take it. He didn't know for sure, but the other dead mercenaries were probably quite expensive as well. Atran was definitely skilled. He had even been able to raise the stakes by this much with just a few pieces of the tablet. It was a better result than Yi Yanwu expected. I definitely found the right person. Yi Yanwu stared at Atran. Atran stepped back, thinking he would be tricked again. What is it this time? You still have the authority to open the merchant window, right? I want to make a deal. The merchant window. It was a system that was only allowed to mysterious merchants. Also, the higher a merchant's rank, the more types of items they could have. Even though Atran was on the edge of a cliff, he was still a director of the West Wind Union, so he could handle most items. Deal, my ass. Think of what you did until now. There's nothing good that comes from. This item is probably good enough. Yi Yanwu pushed the Yaltabao safe towards him. Flinch. Atran's body shook. The Yaltabao safe is an item that mysterious merchants went crazy for. Its value would never decrease. Rather, its value was steadily increasing as people tried to hoard them. When you made deals with those, you could always collect a fee from using it. The calculator in Atran's head quickly spun. Atran's guard went a bit down and he coughed. But still, that's. At that moment, Yi Yanwu pulled out 4 more safes. Anything you want. We love our customers. Atran bowed deeply enough for his head to touch the ground. 5 Yaltabao safes were enough to attempt a comeback from his bankruptcy. So, Our lovable customer, do you have anything in particular that you're looking for? We at the Westwind Union have a 2,000-year history, so we have all kinds of rare items that you can't find at prices like these. Would you like to look at the boutique? He was rubbing his hands like a fly, looking like he was ready to sell his soul. The Ice King, Twice, and Nocturne shook their heads. They laughed in disbelief, knowing where Yi and Wu got the safes. The Red Dragon Quest. What was he trying to do with the rewards he got? It was widely known that the hoarder was the Martial King's disciple. They thought it incredulous that he was trying to bother the Red Dragon with a reward he got from them. They were all thinking the same thing. The disciple takes after his teacher. Yi and Wu didn't care about the looks he was getting and spoke to Atran. I want your entire stock of dragon killers. Quote exclamation mark quote. Quote exclamation mark quote. Ha ha ha, so that's what it was. There was a way. Twice and Nocturne had surprised eyes, and the Ice King clapped as he chuckled. Dragon Killer. A lance that also went by the name Dragon Spear. It was over 6 meters large and weighed hundreds of kilograms. But at the same time, it was as thin as a woman's arm. Like its namesake, it was a weapon that was specialized in catching dragons. A long time ago, people who had grudges against the Summer Queen had gathered to create this, but they were found by the Summer Queen, and the creation process of the weapon vanished from history. However, there were a select few that leaked into the black market or the unions, and Yi and Wu was asking for these. If I can use this. Atran's mind quickly circulated. The Westwind Union had more dragon killers than the rest of the unions combined. They had about 80% of the remaining ones. It was because they had thought that its value would rise astronomically at the time, so they brought it in bulk. However, the Westwind Union was regretting this decision. The dragon killer was definitely outstanding, but the way it was used was tricky. It was heavy, and it broke easily. You could only use it once. Who would want to buy something like that at such a price? The dragon killer was just gathering dust in their storage room. And if he got a hefty commission for getting rid of the horrible items? I'm lucky. Atran shut his lips so he wouldn't cheer from happiness. During times like these, he couldn't show how he was feeling. He wouldn't be able to scam the customer like that. But when he cleared his throat and met Yi and Wu's eyes, Atran sighed. Yi and Wu's eyes were curved upwards, with a gaze like he knew what Atran was thinking. Of course he would know that the dragon killer was treated like an ugly duckling. It was expected. Someone who tried to scam a mysterious merchant wouldn't have brought it up otherwise. Atran wasn't positive, but Yi and Wu probably knew the economy more than the merchants. Here, the pushover was Atran. He. Of course. As expected from you. Your insight is incredible. You've considered well, sir. The dragon killers that we have at the Westwind Union are better cared for than the rest of the dragon killers in the market, and they function great. However. But it wouldn't hurt to try. Atran's words faded away as he continued. With this amount, you can only buy 3% of our current stock. I'll look for another merchant if you don't want to. Atran grabbed onto Yi and Wu, who was turning away. Egu. He. Why are you being like this, sir? You've done business with me before. Is this all our relationship amounts to? Why are you so rushed? You have to finish listening to what I'm saying. Of course, that would be under normal circumstances, but I'll give you a special discount. Yi and Wu smirked as Atran began to speak faster. Then how much can I buy? A little more than half. Yi and Wu turned away again. Egu. Of course we have to give you more than that. 7%. Heek. No, we can't do that. We still have the fees from taking care of them, so there won't be anything left for us. 8%. Yes, sir. The deal is done. Atran sealed the deal after getting ripped off by Yi and Wu. You have paid times 5 feet Yaltabao safes, to purchase times 31 feet dragon killers. All the Yaltabao safes in Yi and Wu's hand disappeared, and in their place, 31 6-meter-long spears were at his feet. Tn. Instead of 31, it said 30 of them in the raw. I changed it assuming it's an author mistake. But Yi and Wu wasn't satisfied with that. You still have some left in stock, right? Sir, even if they're in stock right now it's too diff. I'll buy not only what's left in stock, but all that's been exchanged in the black market or in other guilds. You can take whatever fees you need. Are you talking about the rest of the dragon killers? Is that a no? Of course you can. Definitely. We'll bring everything that's in the tower, and even the ones that are outside as well. There are other things I want to buy too. Yi and Wu spoke of the things he was thinking about. But Atran's face changed as he heard the list. They were all horrible products that were in the backroom, like the dragon killer. However, they were ridiculously expensive, so they were a pain in the butt for the union. He didn't know why Yi and Wu needed them, but Yi and Wu said the more of them there were, the better. It was a colossal amount for a single purchase, and Atran's smile got wider every time. If this purchase was successful, he would definitely be able to stay in the union. It meant that he could have a chance to make a comeback. Now, Yi and Wu didn't look like a demon but a heaven-sent angel. And that's all. Is that possible? Of course. Even if it's not, we'll have to do whatever we can to get it. Atran was ready to give his kidneys and liver to Yi and Wu. As fast as possible. Understood. But, is there a problem? How are you planning on paying? Yi and Wu grinned. Why, you think I'll run away with the items? Atran jumped up and down where he was standing. Egu, I wouldn't dare to think that. Of course I trust you. He. However, as you know, there isn't much affection in this world and everyone's struggling financially. He. Of course I'll give it to you. Yi and Wu nodded his head. Atran's eyes were filled with expectation as he held his hands forward. What would he give as the payment? More Yaltabao safes, karma, or books from the One-Horned tribe? Anything was fine. They were all things that were trustworthy in the market. However, Yi and Wu crushed Atran's expectations. Credit. Sorry, put it on my credit. Momentarily, Yi and Wu seemed like a demon that would swallow Atran up. Atran's face quickly turned red. Are you telling me to trust you? Why can't you? You must be joking. Do you really think I'll steal them? Yi and Wu scoffed. Atran was about to say something else but quickly realized something. The quest of the Bureau. What are you doing now that you know? Aren't you getting on it? There was still a quest that was left, the quest calling for Red Dragon's arrest. The more Red Dragon's buildings were destroyed and the more their members were killed, the greater the rewards. And of course, Yi and Wu planned to get the first place position. But shouldn't we at least do the Pledge of Mana? I don't think this is the time to be doing that. Well, if you don't want to, I'll go to another merchant. Shit, Atran kicked the ground. Scamming a merchant, you'll definitely go to hell when you die. I already know that, so quickly get on it. Arg. Atran glared at Yi and Wu with a wrong face and quickly adjusted the system. This quest was probably going to end in a day, so he quickly brought the items on the condition of getting the payment a day later. This was only possible because Atran was reputable amongst the unions. You have purchased an additional times 14 feet dragon killers. You have purchased times 21 of Fabio Forest's Hunter's Bow Trick. You have purchased times 6 of Great Monkey's Tail Thorn. Yi and Wu's eyes shined as he saw the items piling up. He didn't realize he had asked for this much when he listed them out loud, but seeing them in front of him, there were quite a lot. Atran handed over the lifeblood of albino trolls after making the last of his purchases, grinding his teeth. He doubted how much would be left over for him. Here you are. Sir. I'll use them to their fullest. Thanks, investor. Atran felt like crying, having been demoted from a merchant to a kind investor. This guy really frustrated people every time he spoke. And it suddenly occurred to him. But where's he planning on using them all? No, can he even use them properly? Dragon killers were too heavy, so most rankers couldn't even lift them. It was tricky to use them the right way. But the hoarder was still a lower floor player. Atran didn't understand how he would use them. The same for the other items. They were probably harder to use than the dragon killers. He couldn't get rid of his anxiety. He ended up making the purchases because of the flow in their conversation, but if something went wrong, it was the end of him. Yi and Wu calmly tossed the items in his shadow and hid himself using blink again. He searched for somewhere he could prepare for the hunt. Be on guard so no one can approach me. Open corner bracket. Close corner bracket. Open corner bracket. Yes, sir. Open hollow corner bracket. Got it. Be careful. Close hollow corner bracket. TN. From this point on, brackets will be changed to something that is more similar to those in the RAWs. I will. After Yi and Wu settled himself, he called for Shannon and the others to come to him. Hanryong and Rebecca split left and right, and Brahm and Boo began to set up a temporary barrier. However, Shannon was quiet. His footsteps were heavier than normal. Yi and Wu called for him. Shannon, open corner bracket. Do you have any more orders, master? There wasn't a face under the head armor, but his inferno sight was a bit duller than normal. Yi and Wu looked into Shannon's eyes as he spoke. I'm your master now, be aware of that. Open corner bracket. I showed a side of myself I shouldn't have. I apologize. Shannon kneeled on a single knee and bowed his head. He had been a bit uncomfortable fighting against his old master since he was a part of the Red Dragon once. Yi and Wu saw his confusion, and Shannon acknowledged his mistake with a bow. Even if they didn't put a label on their statuses, they had to be clear about who was above who in times like these. This is the only time I'll forgive it. Remember that. Open corner bracket. Thank you, sir. Shannon's inferno sight flamed up again. His mind was at ease now. War was just war, he had to be loyal to his current life. After Shannon returned to his position, Brahm carefully asked Yi and Wu a question. Will it be okay to leave him like that? It'll be fine, that guy isn't that weak. I suppose, if he was weak, he wouldn't have become a death noble. Brahm nodded. He turned towards the items that were messily piled up. What are those? It's been a while since I saw that foolish spear. Do you know something called Mercury? Chapter 243.1 The Summer Queen 8. Mercury. Are you talking about the martial arts of the giant species? Yes, Mercury was an old martial art that disappeared with the extinction of the giant species. It was a special type of martial arts for the giant species, who had a unique body over 7 meters tall. It had a flaw in that it wasn't easy to learn for those who weren't of the giant species, but because of this, Valdebik was able to rule supreme in battles. Mercury was the martial art that Valdebik used. It was the martial skill that made him into what he was today. Also, it was the martial skill most appropriate for the dragon killer. As his nickname, the Black Sword, implied, Valdebik mostly used the sword. However, because he had the blood of the warrior giant species, he was skilled with multiple weapons, and the dragon killer was perfect for him, as he preferred spears over bows and arrows. It was so expensive that he couldn't use it as much as he wanted when he was on the lower floors, and on the upper floors, there was no need for it. Yi and Wu's brother hadn't forgotten the shock he felt when Valdebik used the dragon killer, and he explained it in detail in the diary. It moved mountains. That was probably the best way to explain it. The atmosphere around Valdebik when he lifted the dragon killer. And it was as destructive as the atmosphere around him. When the dragon killer targeted a draconian, it was not only the draconian itself but also everything around it that would be swept away. Also, when Valdebik was in the tutorial, he had adjusted the Mercury so Yi and Wu's weak brother could use it. After that, he continued to teach him all kinds of skills, and all of those movements were in the diary. Domain Declaration. TN. Territory Announcement to Domain Declaration. Walk. The moment he released his power, the Philosopher's Stone and hundreds of cores all circulated, his dragon scales growing out of his skin. A power sparked throughout his body, and dragon wings popped out from his back, combining with the wings of fire. It was a power he was using for the first time since he entered the endless world of night. As time went on, the Philosopher's Stone was assimilating to Yi and Wu's body, making him stronger and stronger. On top of this, Yi and Wu added a few more powers. Stigmata of the Goddess. The Third Soul, strengthening. Hyeongshan Axle, receiving the blessing of Athena, the muscles in his body tightened. He made the magic power flow throughout his body using the souls. Kia. This was a new method he had recently come up with. He attempted it thinking that he might be able to be strengthened from the minus energy emanated from melting souls in the magic power. And the result of that was crunch. It was correct. From 100 to 200, 300 to 400, the souls were inputted in order, and when 1,000 souls had filled his body, they melted into magic power and screeched as they circulated along the magic circuit. For a moment, he became dizzy. The power of the Philosopher's Stone circulated even more to bear the magic load. With Hyeongshan Axle on top of this, the demonism came out to control his entire body. His draconic eyes turned red, and his scales turned black. Sharp teeth poked out from his lips. Wee. The different energies gushed around Yi and Wu, Jihostish energy, demonic energy, black energy, and even a murderous energy. They all intertwined like a spider web, and his body showed the extremes of a demonic dragon body when the dragon's blessing and demon's blessing combined together. Just then, Brahm and Boo stepped out from where they had been waiting. Brahm lifted his book of Mars and Boo his lawless book. Then, let's begin. Brahm looked at Yi and Wu, a bit concerned, but Yi and Wu had assured him again and again, so he couldn't say no. As the spell of the alchemist and the lich began, magic circles overlapped under Yi and Wu's feet. He received more buffs through his effects. Muscle strengthening, magic power strengthening, aura increase, explosion creations. Magic that was more advanced than magic equip filled Yi and Wu's body. Like he was under a heavier gravity than normal, his body plopped down. His muscles were pressed, and his bones were crushed. See, crunch, his shoulder was dislocated, he could hear his rib cage breaking. His veins exploded and blood poured out from his eyes. He looked to be in critical condition, like his body would explode any moment. But Yi and Wu didn't even groan. The one-horned tribe and the red dragon turned their head toward the ominous feeling. However, because they had to focus on the war, they couldn't confirm where it was. Just when he was about to collapse because he couldn't bear the dragon's blessing and the demon's blessing. Your body is beginning to collapse because of the enormous pressure. Warning, your body is already at its limits. It may be irrevocably damaged if you continue. The skill, regeneration, is activating. The restoration to the data that is stored in your cells is beginning. The proficiency of the skill, regeneration, has dramatically increased. 12.1%. The proficiency of the skill, regeneration, has dramatically increased. 12.1%. With the regeneration he stole from Vieira Dune, his body was quickly healed. Even with the buffs, as the proficiency of the skill increased, the rate at which he was healed became faster. This led to a change in his body. Your body has been strengthened. Your body has been strengthened. You have reached the limits of your body. It has overcome the limits of the dragon's blessing. It has been strengthened to the limit of the demon's blessing. Is this the end? Unfortunately, it fell quite short from when he was fighting against Agaras, but Yi and Wu was still able to advance the limits of the third step. The situation was different than it was back then. At the time, he had Athena's direct blessing, so he was powerful enough to defeat most high rankers, but he had squeezed this much power out by himself. Of course there would be clear limits. However, on one hand, Yi and Wu was able to easily use his newfound strength. He extended his hand out to where the dragon killer was lying on the floor. The dragon killer floated up into his hand, and the other materials all settled above the spear in a crushed state. Although it was expensive, Valdebec experimented with different ways to use the dragon killer. This was one of them. Ching, the dragon killer trembled as if it liked it. Yi and Wu lifted it onto his shoulder. It was pretty heavy, but with his newfound power that was equivalent to the giant species, it wasn't much trouble. His draconic eyes and extrasensory perception overlapped. Far away, he could see his target. He focused all his consciousness and energy on the edge of the spear and added more skills to it. Demonic magic, Devil King Poison TN. The skill demonism changed to demonic magic as the entity inside Yi and Wu is called demonism. It was a more detrimental poison to a draconic species than devil poison. The poison smeared the spear. Yi and Wu threw the dragon killer with all his might. The lance pierced through the air like light. With a sonic boom, two clouds split apart in the sky where the spear had just moved through. First, those extras outside. The second of the 9 dragon sons, Chimmy, was annoyed by the one-horned tribe that was following him. These mayfly-like bastards, how dare they? They were totally like mayflies. When he shook them off, they would stick on him again, and they continued to attack him at his blind spots. A species that was genius at fighting. It was true, he felt like he knew why his mother had told him to be careful when dealing with them. But Chimmy didn't like this fact. He was someone with the great dragon's blood. He wasn't someone who suffered from these lower-level species. The only way to take care of things like these was to destroy them. He puffed his cheeks, and a toxic air filled his mouth. Its extended breath. Everyone fall back. Prepare for the toxins. The one-horned tribe after Chimmy quickly put some distance from where he was. Chimmy had continued to spew out his breath, but this was probably going to be more than what they had experienced until now. The red dragon players around Chimmy also ran away. Chimmy's poison didn't differentiate between friend and foe. A lot of his comrades had already suffered from it. And like what they had expected, the breath that Chimmy spewed out was different than normal. Less than acidic poison breath greater than. Not only was it toxic, it was acidic. It was his power. He wasn't supposed to use it without his mother's permission, but this wasn't the time to consider those things. Just when he was going to spit out his breath. Sheik. Quang. With a sonic boom that was enough to rip his eardrums, something landed under his chin. The shock was great. Half of his head crumbled in an instant with an intense pain. He was barely able to save his life with the amazing regenerative ability of the draconic species, but the real problem came after. The acidic poison breath lost its direction and landed on his long body. Chick. His body was smoking with white smoke and melted. The vein of his poison was broken, and pure poison flowed into his head. Chaos! Chimmy shouted from the extreme pain and shook his body. The acidic poison was too much for even him to handle. His body that was several meters long lashed around. He tried to heal himself using any means possible. Open hollow corner bracket Devil King poison. How? But his body didn't regenerate. The more time passed, the worse it became. The Devil King poison rapidly spread throughout his body. The attack didn't end there. When the third dragon killer came flying at him, Chimmy's body was filled with holes. The dragon killer broke into pieces once it hit its target. Pieces of the dragon killer were stuck all over Chimmy's body, and it caused him to be poisoned much faster. Just when he was wavering around, not able to come together, something came from the sky. Wave of fire. 72 Bian, Nai, Bayak. The wave of fire had used the power of the 72 Bian to pour on Chimmy in the form of lightning. Chimmy's body absorbed the lightning. As the lightning exploded in his body, his insides and outsides were completely burned. Open hollow corner bracket N, no. Chimmy's body was already a pile of ashes. Most of his body wasn't able to function anymore. It was a critical attack, but he had an intense will to live. If he had some more time, he might have survived. However, I don't know what's happening. Catch him, he's tastily roasted, so our dinner today is dragon meat. Ha ha ha, what a feast. The one-horned tribe ran at Chimmy with happy laughter. Every time they swung their swords, Chimmy's flesh was cut away. Chimmy didn't have the strength to resist anymore. His large head plopped to the ground. Chapter 244 Turbulent World 1. Team. Thursdays, Yahiko. Open hollow corner bracket Ka. Rumble. The Summer Queen shouted at the pain of being disconnected from the fourth. The 81 eyes may be spiritually connected to her, but the 9 dragon sons were shadows that shared her power. With the connection forcefully cut, the aftereffects were tremendous. It might have been better if the power returned to her, but the pain doubled because it didn't. Her child had been eaten by another one of her children. What a load of bullshit. The Martial King cursed and brought his hands down the Summer Queen. It didn't look like much happened from the outside, but the energy whirled inside of the Summer Queen. Crunch. Her muscles, veins, and magic circuit, and even the deep internal organs were split. Kung. The Summer Queen's hind legs collapsed. Her colossal body landed on the ground. She squirmed up and down, and a burning smell came from her mouth. She didn't seem to have the will to fight anymore. The devil poison had already entered her marrow, and the holiness that she barely pulled out was at its bottom. She tried to catch the Martial King using her magic through any means possible, but the Martial King quickly moved to break the magic apart or to avoid it. After her spine and back were broken, the fight shifted to favor the Martial King. The Martial King spit out phlegm mixed with blood. His boiling blood still hadn't calmed down. The exhilaration from the fight made his body uncomfortable. He wanted to let it out somehow, but the Summer Queen couldn't handle him. The Summer Queen wasn't in the condition to fight him in the first place. He was a bit annoyed at that. Other than Alpharaon, the only person to stand against him in the entire tower was the Summer Queen. The 9 kings. He didn't show it, but the Martial King was dissatisfied at being tied up in the same bunch as those trash. They couldn't even ride on his coattails. And now, the only person among them who could fight him was dying. It might have been alright if she died after a fierce battle, but she had been weak from the beginning. He didn't do much, other than punch her a few times. His punches were turning out to be useless. I don't like it. The Martial King narrowed his eyes. It had been a while since he felt this competitive. He was happy after feeling like he returned to his old days, but now he felt uncomfortable, like he hadn't wiped his bottom after taking care of his business. He wanted to heal the Summer Queen to fight her again. But her health was clearly far gone. Open hollow corner bracket give it. Heaven Wing. Heaven Wing, the last person to see before you die isn't me but that kid. That's also annoying. He knew that Heaven Wing Cha Jung-woo had done something while battling the Summer Queen. However, he didn't know what it was. All he guessed was that it was something to do with the Summer Queen's messed up body right now. When the shadow of death was gripping the Summer Queen, she thought of not the Martial King but of Cha Jung-woo. Her eyes weren't on the Martial King anymore. That meant that in the end, it wasn't the Martial King who killed her, but Cha Jung-woo. The Martial King laughed in disbelief. What would change if he got mad here? He couldn't be angry at a dead person. Even if he hadn't met Cha Jung-woo, he thought Cha Jung-woo was a pretty nice guy. Although he felt like something tasty was taken from right in front of him, nothing would change just because he threw a fit. All he could do now was probably end the Summer Queen's pain faster. It was the last show of respect the martial king could show the summer queen, who was once his rival. Open hollow corner bracket mother. Open hollow corner bracket your majesty. Be careful. The 81 eyes and the 9 dragon eyes called out desperately to the summer queen while dashing to the martial king. But they were too far, and the martial king's hand was closer. A small energy bead was made on his hands. It was about the size of a fingernail. It looked weak, but it was a condensed form of the 8 writings of divination. Less than martial extreme greater than. It was the knowledge he learned from studying the 8 writings of divination to take it to a higher level. It was something he originally planned to show Alpharaon, but it was also nice to send her away with this. It was out of respect and pity. Just when he was planning on planting the martial extreme onto the summer queen. Open hollow corner bracket Seasongnam, I apologize, but I have to take her. The martial king lifted his head at his youngest disciple's sudden open speaking. And there, tens of split dragon killers fell like a downpour with a tremendously condensed wave of fire behind them. Quack quack wong. The dragon killers landed on the summer queen. The wave of fire followed right after and didn't let the summer queen catch a break. Yi and Wu brought down 8 dragon killers. The wave of fire continued to fall down on the summer queen, almost draining Yi and Wu's magic circuit, and hit her over and over again. She broke and broke. Quack quack wong, quack wong, krrrr. RRRR. When the attack that seemed like it would end the world finally stopped, in the dust that settled after it, the summer queen was destroyed beyond recognition. Open hollow corner bracket heaven wing. And with those last words, she breathed out her tenacious final breath. A cold silence descended upon them. Everyone was speechless. People on the battlefield didn't understand what was happening and just swallowed nervously. No, they did understand. They understood it in their heads. But they didn't want to. It was because they didn't believe the sight before their eyes. Of course, there was nothing to say for the red dragon, and even the one-horned tribe just blankly stared. They had run to kill the summer queen, but no one believed that she would really die. That was how heavy the weight of the summer queen was. The last dragon, the dominator of the tower. The lord that had legendarily and historically ruled over the tower for thousands of years closed her eyes. When they realized that the blackly burnt summer queen wasn't breathing anymore. Mother. Waltz came running first. She pushed the head elder far away and came flying with her dragon wings. Her eyes were bloodshot. Everything that happened until now flashed by her head. You must live happily, not like us. Her father and mother, who had closed their eyes with her hand tightly held in theirs. They repeatedly told her not to be bound to her tribe or her family and to live freely. But there weren't many ways for an orphan to live in the violent world of the tower alone. Because of that, Waltz's only childhood memories were of her digging through trash cans or fighting with beasts that wanted a piece of her. Then, she met her mother. It was a rainy day. She was sobbing because her friend had died after being hit by a rock, trying to protect her. It was the kind of day when she wanted to go jump in a lake if that was what being free meant. Come with me. At the time, she didn't know why she held her hand out to her. She didn't even care. She was planning on dying anyway, so it didn't matter. And that day because 1 year, and then 10 years. She had become the daughter of the person that held her hand and was able to stand in front of her. She knew why her mother took her in. From a long time ago, she learned that there was no such thing as kindness without strings attached. Blood. Her mother needed her genes and potential. But Waltz was still grateful. It was the first time someone needed her. Her birth parents had told her to live freely, but that was an irresponsible thing to say. Waltz needed a place to call home. A house and blankets. The summer queen was that very thing. So she had worked hard. She learned Mugong and magic. She even told her mother with a smile that even she would struggle in a fight with her. Other people said the summer queen was a monster. A monster that was trying to swallow the tower. A monster who was trying to climb up higher to even swallow the gods and demons. No one could escape her touch nor her shadow. But to Waltz, the summer queen was a mother she was grateful towards for giving her a house and blankets and the only person to hold her hand in that cold place. Waltz extended her hand. Her mother shouldn't be lying there. Even if she was in that condition, Waltz wanted to send her on her way comfortably. However, the summer queen's shadow suddenly stretched out, soaring up in the air to wrap around the corpse like a cast. No, Waltz anxiously tried to hold on to the summer queen's corpse, but the large corpse melted completely into the shadow. ACKKK. Waltz shouted, pulling her hair seeing the summer queen disappear right under her nose. Then, she whipped her head to somewhere else. The Martial King was standing there, completely fine from the attack of the dragon killers. He had a complicated face. It was a face like he felt unpleasant and uncomfortable at the same time. A flabbergasted laugh escaped from his mouth. He was cursing at his youngest disciple inwardly. Then, he saw Waltz glowering at him and narrowed his eyes. Wee. A dragon fear similar to the Summer Queen's waved around Waltz. But the problem was the familiar strength she exuded. It was the deep scent of plums. This was the unique phenomenon that came from the Plum family's skill, Plum divine martial art. How did that child have it? Waltz ground her teeth. That moment, the strength that Waltz had been hiding was released. 360 energy veins opened next to her magic circuit. Vital energy escaped from her arteries. And with the horrifying sound of bones being split, a horn popped out from her left temple. Her 2 eyes stained to purple. They were the horn and purple eyes that symbolized the one-horned tribe, and she also had dragon scales, wings, and a tail, which symbolized a dragon human. The Summer Queen constantly warned her not to unbind the seal until her vital energy and magic power were completely combined, but Waltz couldn't heed her words anymore. You took everything from me. Waltz growled with her dragon fear. I'll kill you. Die. Waltz clenched her fist like she was going to run at the Martial King any second. Just then, Waltz whipped her head to look above her. The Martial King also turned his gaze in the same direction. His face slightly crumpled in annoyance. What now? Countless portals were opening in the sky. And the players, who were pouring down, they all had the same appearance. Red armor and long spears. They had what looked like 3 swords at their hips and a giant tower shield on their backs. Rather than players, it was more fitting to call them soldiers. They all moved as one and quickly stood in order. Why are those damn things bloody here? The Martial King knew them well. The Blood Army, Shui Jun. It was an army that the Blood Land, who ridiculously called themselves a moving country, commanded. And the people who appeared were the Marquises, the 4 Dukes, and the Royal Guard. It could only mean one thing now that the greatest forces of the Bloodland had appeared. Ahem, what a shame, we thought there would be a buffet waiting for us if we came now. Kung, something like a heavy ball fell in front of the Blood Army. He had a fat and short body. With explosive cheeks and a crown, he looked ridiculous like a thimble. He was so large, that he stumbled after landing on the ground and was only able to get up with the help of Duke Ardbad. You pig, what are you doing here? Who dares to call me by such a lowly name? Oh. Who's this? My dear friend, Nayu. It's been a while. He smiled as soon as he saw the Martial King. He looked ridiculous trying to act proper and elegant with an appearance that was clearly not. But the Martial King knew the hidden violence under the silly appearance. The obsession to get everything he wanted and to kill it if he couldn't have it. A lunatic who wouldn't blink an eye to massacre people if it was for his greed. He also had an army, who was ready to die for him. The Gluttony Emperor, the commander of the Blood Army chuckled, but the Martial King hated to see the oil that was dripping down his forehead. He frowned, and lifted his top lip up in disgust. Why are you here? Is it payback for being beat up last time? I remember your eardrums went out that time. Is your right ear okay? It was a clear aggression. Duke Ardbad moved his hand to his sword with a scowl, but the Gluttony Emperor jumped up and down with a wave of his hand. No, what do you see me as? How can you make such a horrifying joke like that? Why would I fight you? So improper. It was a long time ago, but the Gluttony Emperor still remembered clearly. He had touched a member of the One-Horned tribe just to taste them, and the Martial King had burst into his castle alone and destroyed half of it. Sweat dripped down his back just thinking about it. If he had killed the tribe member, he wouldn't be alive today. But he had still been beaten up horribly, so he almost wet himself when he recalled those memories. The 9 kings, fuck them, the Martial King had escaped from that range a long time ago. And with the Summer Queen gone now, the Gluttony Emperor had no intentions of making the Martial King his enemy. Alpharaon merely occasionally looked down from the 77th floor, he almost never interfered in anything that happened. That meant that the absolute strongest in the tower was the Martial King. There was no need to get on his bad side. Being strong to the weak and weak to the strong. That was the secret to how the Gluttony Emperor led the Bloodland this far. The reason why I came here was to help another one of my dear friends. Friend, there he is. The Martial King turned his head to where the Gluttony Emperor was looking at and slightly wrinkled his forehead. Far away on the Will, Yi and Wu was looking at them. Just then, the Martial King understood everything that had happened. From the Walpurgisnacht to the Bloodland, all the powerful clans in the tower had been played by his disciple. You must feel quite at ease. You have such a wise disciple. How are you able to have 3 disciples like him? Could you tell me the secret? Ha ha ha. It's a joke, a joke. The gluttony emperor inched away from the martial king, who was glaring at him. Then, he carefully brought a subject up. But, you know, what is it this time? What are you going to do after this? The martial king snorted, looking at the gluttony emperor. It was obvious what the guy wanted. He was now the strongest in the tower, but he only cared about his honor and the safety of his tribe. He didn't have any desire to control or rule. That meant one thing: without the Summer Queen, the throne of the tower's ruler was empty. And the person who sits on it first will keep it. Obviously, just like his obsession for eating, the Gluttony Empire's desire for power was great. That was his motive for wanting to re-establish a disappeared land. And the first receiver of that, is it that child? The Gluttony Empire licked his lips, looking at Waltz with her dragon fear. He seemed to be uncomfortable about the horn on Waltz's head. The martial king shook his head with disinterest. He found out that Waltz was from the one-horned tribe, but that was it. He had already thrown away his sibling. He had no need to take care of a child, whose name he didn't even know, who left the tribe. I guess, since interfering with the situation further doesn't suit you, I'll take care of the rest. There's no better scavenger than you. Can't you compare me to a wolf or an eagle instead? Wolves and eagles tore into meat that beasts left behind. And at the same time, they symbolized courage and combat. The Gluttony Emperor didn't feel any embarrassment comparing himself to them. The true winner was the one who took it all. On the Gluttony Emperor's orders, the Blood Army lifted their spears as one. Clack, clack, clack. They started singing a military song. Song of victory. All the minds of the soldiers connected and increased their combative power, and their aura started to whirl around them. The Gluttony Emperors slowly began to change after receiving their aura. His chubby skin turned into tight muscles, and his bones grew longer, leaving him at a tall height of 2 meters. He was thin, and his gaze was hollow. An ominous atmosphere wrapped around him. Everyone enjoy. Today is a feast. Everyone eat and drink to their heart's content. As the Gluttony Emperor shouted with a drool, the Blood Army ran forward with a shout. Even then, the military song didn't stop. Kung, 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 kung. And Waltz, who had been watching the scene, was surrounded by her subordinates who came over. Baihi, you have to move. They all clenched their teeth. With the Summer Queen dead and the Bloodland here, the Red Dragon was in no state to fight anymore. Loss. For the first time since the Red Dragon was established, they felt the humiliation that no one else had been able to give them other than Alpharon. Waltz bit her lower lip. She wanted to stay until the end and avenge her mother, but she had to take care of the rest of her siblings and her subordinates. Clenching her fist, Waltz opened her mouth to the sky. Everyone, retreat. It was quietly spoken, but it was delivered to everyone connected to the Red Dragon. Dragon language. The power to control the laws of the world as she spoke. She was the only one of the Summer Queen's children who could freely use dragon language. And with that as the beginning, the rest of the 9 dragon sons, the 81 eyes, and the Red Dragon players all ripped their scrolls to open the large portal. The prey is escaping. Quickly eat them without losing a single one. The Gluttony Emperor's bloodshot eyes turned firm. It was to not lose the chance to taste the delicious dragon meat. Chapter 245 A Turbulent World 2. You have earned a great amount of karma in the sudden quest field arrest 1. You have contributed a lot to killing Ismenios. The Red Dragon has suffered great losses. Final ranks. Rank 1. Nayu 501,953 points. Rank 2. # 105,119 points. You have cleared the quest with high accomplishments. The authority of choosing your reward has been handed over to the Bureau. Please wait a moment. You have earned the 4th Intrenian as a reward. You have earned the 5th Intrenian as a reward. You have earned the last dragon's corpse as a reward. You have earned ... Yi and Wu was looking at the endless messages that were popping up when something bared its teeth from his hand. It was a soul trying to escape his grasp. Kia, it was on a different level than normal souls. Its body, vestige, and size were all abnormal. It was the Summer Queen's soul. Yi and Wu had all kinds of enemies. Each of their motives was different, and the extent to which they had hurt his brother varied as well. There were those like Bahal and Leonte, who personally stabbed his brother in the heart, and those like Valdebek, who merely disappeared without a trace. In the case of the Gluttony Emperor or the head bishop of the Devil Army, they made an alliance to prevent new rivals from appearing. From that perspective, the Summer Queen's position was a bit iffy. She didn't care much about Arthea, she didn't even look at the lower floors. Even when Bahal joined the Red Dragon, she didn't think much about that clan. The people who fought against Arthea and his brother were her underlings, not her. No, before that, the Summer Queen and his brother used to greet each other cordially. There was no need for her to avoid a descendant of Calidus. However, the Summer Queen turned her back on Jungwoo eventually. In the end, she even stepped up to kill him. In that process, the fight between his brother and the Summer Queen began. The Summer Queen was barely able to chase his brother out, but that was only after her dragon heart was destroyed. The rest was history that Yi and Woo could extrapolate. The dragon heart had continued to crumble until it arrived at its demise. And the result of that? Open corner bracket. Who are you? The Summer Queen's soul growled in Yi and Woo's grip. She forced out her consciousness in the inescapable bind. The despair of the Black King was an incredible item that not even the soul of a draconic species could escape. Her vestige was filled with the intent to kill Yi and Woo. The person responsible for all this. She couldn't forgive the person that made her into this pitiful state, not even letting her move on. Open corner bracket. You. Yi and Woo slightly lifted his mask to show his face. Does this answer your question? Open corner bracket. H. How? The Summer Queen's soul entered a panicked state for a moment and was speechless. The ashy figure trembled. It was because she had never heard of a dead person coming back to life. Aside from that, she was a draconic species with draconic eyes. If Heaven Wing came back, she would know, even if he wore a mask. Just what happened? Her vestige shook. Under normal circumstances, she would have understood the situation quickly, but the shock of becoming a soul still hadn't disappeared. The curse of Heaven Wing stained her soul. Unless you escape that way of thinking, you'll never know. Ever. You'll probably die suffering by yourself. The way of thinking that Heaven Wing alluded to was the Summer Queen's long-lived resolve to defeat Alpharon and swallow all the gods and demons on the 98th floor. During all that time as the last member of her species, she realized that she was unique in this world, and this lonely path was hers to walk. But the person who had directly stood in her path was Heaven Wing. A mere weakling, the leftovers of the now-dead Calidus, had mocked her life, not knowing his place. The Summer Queen couldn't control herself and fought him. However, even while Heaven Wing's sky wings were breaking and he was falling to the ground, swallowed up by the fire of breath, the pity in his eyes didn't disappear. Poor pitiful Ismenios. The last dragon. Open corner bracket. Heaven Wing. Heaven Wing. The nightmare that she had pushed into a part of her mind came bursting out. Her entire vestige turned black. The Summer Queen's soul shook up and down, as if telling him to let go of her. It'll be dangerous if she's left alone. Yi and Woo forced a tighter grip on the squirming Summer Queen and frowned. The black bracelet's binds were shaking. He was only able to calm it down after using the third spirit. It'll be hard to digest this. A dragon was definitely a dragon. He thought that it would be hard to control it. Just then, Yi and Woo felt something approaching him and put the Summer Queen back into his collection. Even she wouldn't be able to do anything if she was in there. Haha, you look fine. I couldn't have imagined you would be the person to have done such a thing. The people who came next to Yi and Woo were Atran's party members. The Ice King laughed with a cheerful face. The attack targeting the Summer Queen. It was a memorable scene for the Ice King, who had fought on the battlefield for a long time. Yi and Woo felt a bit wary of the Ice King. He knew that he wasn't a bad person, but the unfounded kindness made him uncomfortable. They had just met for the first time, and they had nothing in common except for the Martial King. It was the feeling of an outsider being uncomfortable by the friendliness of an insider. He was wondering how he should reply when he felt another presence. Sweck. The thick smell of blood that couldn't be erased no matter how hard you tried. It was the Martial King and the One-Horned Tribe. But the Martial King at the forefront of the group did not look happy. He looked stiff, unlike his usual chill self. His gaze and direction as he flew in was fixed on Yi and Woo. There was a violent atmosphere, like he would swing his fists any moment. The Ice King, twice, and Nocturne moved Atran back to safety. And like they expected, the Martial King's fists headed straight for Yi and Woo. A fierce whirlpool waved around him, powerful enough to blow Yi and Woo's head off. But Yi and Woo didn't move to dodge him. He just stood there. Eventually, the Martial King's fist stopped right in front of Yi and Woo's forehead. Kwang! A canyon behind Yi and Woo was blown away. Most canyons had already been broken from the Martial King and Summer Queen's fight, and now everything was gone. It was a dangerous situation where he could die at any moment, but Yianwu didn't blink at all and just looked at the Martial King's fist. The Martial King frowned with dissatisfaction and flicked Yianwu's forehead. Talk, cuck. Yianwu wrapped his hands around his head at the pain that felt like his skull was cracking. He hadn't made any sound when his body was being destroyed from the buffs, but this flick of the finger was too painful. The Martial King's head tilted. Cuck, Kyuk, you ate everything that your teacher set up, but, cuck, is all you say. You'll only get yourself together after having one foot in the sticks and seeing the Summer Queen's face on the opposite side, huh? Yianwu couldn't bring himself to say that the Summer Queen's soul was in his collection. He felt like he would be beaten to death if he joked like that. But he must have had some kind of mental illness. Yianwu heard himself talking back. I was only trying to help. Talk, ack, why are you talking back? The Martial King glared at his disciple, who was on the ground with his arms around his head, and sighed. Then, he asked with a serious face. Was that old lady one of them? Yianwu still hadn't told the Martial King his identity and his goal. However, the Martial King knew that his youngest disciple had a deep-seated grudge, and he was climbing the tower for that very purpose. He was asking if this was one of the ways of paying back that grudge. Yianwu silently nodded, and the Martial King shook his head with exasperation. The scale of his payback was tremendous. His vengeance destroyed an outer space and involved the Bureau, the unions, and the large clans. Even the Bloodland participated in the end. It couldn't get more chaotic than this. He, the Martial King, had caused a lot of incidents when he was younger, but it couldn't match his youngest disciple. Yianwu looked like a serious scholar on the outside, but his actions were nasty. Well, that's why I like him. The Martial King chuckled to himself, thinking that he wasn't normal either for thinking that this was fun. Anyways, you did this, so clean up after yourself neatly and come back. The Martial King patted Yianwu on the back and moved to where the elders and the tribe members were. Our tribe leader can't be true to his feelings. Just say that he did well. Is that so hard to say? Or is it because you're shy? Shut up, you fools. Aside from that, where's that bastard? Of course he ran away. Let's go catch him first. The Martial King exchanged some words with his tribe members and turned his head to where Atran and the others were. The Ice King cheerfully greeted him. Long time no see. When did you come back out, sir? I didn't hear anything. It hasn't been that long. You're the same as you were back then. Your disciple, right, he's exactly like you. Is that a compliment or an insult? Take it however you'd like. The Martial King grinned and looked the Ice King up and down. It seems like you've still got it. How about it? Shall we play a game later? He, don't joke like that. If it was 10 years ago, I would, but my joints ache these days. I won't recover if I'm hurt. You still look good enough to lift a spoon. Anyways, I'll see you next time. As the Martial King and the Ice King said their farewells, he met Nocturne's eyes. But the Martial King didn't say anything and just passed by Nocturne, like he didn't know him. No, he pretended like there wasn't anyone there. Even if they cut off ties, they had still been teacher and disciple at one point. However, Nocturne looked unaffected. The Martial King and the One-Horned tribe disappeared as quickly as they came. It was to find their lost target. Yianwu fixed his mask and got up. The war was over. It had only lasted a few days, but he felt like he had been through lots of things during that time. And on one side, he thought that even though he caught Viera Dune and the Summer Queen, even though such a drastic change had happened, there were still a lot of enemies and the tower wasn't affected in the slightest considering its size. Oriboni. Just then, Adora carefully approached him. What's wrong? You have a bump on your head. Are you alright? Yianwu smiled sourly after touching his forehead. The bump was huge. He still felt numb. Ha ha, ha ha ha. Jiang Wei was on the move after realizing that the One-Horned tribe had begun their chase again, and he was escaping into the outer sections of the tower. But even though he was clearly being chased, the smile didn't escape his lips. However, it wasn't a laughter of joy. It was one filled with sadness, hate, and disillusionment. So he's here. I was wondering. Jiang Wei couldn't forget it. The appearance of the hoarder he saw as he was aiming for the Martial King. He had only heard the rumors, but he had never seen him. Even so, he felt two things when he looked at him. Familiarity, and also, he's dangerous. Why did he think that? Although the hoarder had a martial ability that didn't fit the lower floors, as it stood equal to rankers, his skill wasn't threatening to Jiang Wei, a high ranker. But still, the warning of his instincts didn't leave his mind. It should have been a face he didn't know because of the mask. Why did he feel familiar? No, to be exact, the atmosphere was familiar. From far away, Jiang Wei chased after Yan Wu. He wanted to know the reason for the warning. And in that process, when he saw the eyes beyond the mask, Jiang Wei realized who it was right away. Those eyes, even though they were covered with something, they were eyes he couldn't forget. The eyes that seemed indifferent, and at the same time, fiery like they were going to burn the world. Sister, Chief is inside the tower. He's inside the tower. Chapter 246 A Turbulent World 3. Team. HH, Thursdays, Yahiko. Jiang Wei first met him in Africa. At the time, the UN had secretly gathered an elite squad of people from different countries to go against an enemy force, and skilled people from each country joined it. He participated as the commander. The squad members had laughed when they first saw him. They were all from the special forces in their respective squads. They were already uncomfortable that he was Asian, but the fact that he was a youngster who wasn't even 30 years old annoyed them. Jiang Wei wondered how the commander would act in that situation. Would he squeak by, or would he break apart like those commanders who tried to rule with an iron fist? Or would he do what he was supposed to and make everyone shut up? Jiang Wei was a citizen of France, but because he was Asian, he had received a lot of bias and prejudice. Now, his comrades greeted him as he walked by, but a lot of time had passed for that to happen. However, the commander acted like he didn't care about the fingers that were pointed at him. He did just enough. All he did was give orders to train at the assigned times. If there was something special about him, it was only that he participated in the training as well despite being the commander. But that wasn't too out of the ordinary. The squad members didn't open up to the commander because he seemed lacking. Rather, they even provoked him directly, but he didn't seem to care. As time passed, Jiang Wei's interest in the commander faded away. Then, his sister, who had cut ties with him and moved to the US after saying that she would live happily with Yongqi, suddenly visited the squad. Hand in hand with a 5-year-old little girl. Jiang Wei pulled himself together from reminiscing about the past. This wasn't the time to be thinking about the old days. Since he didn't know when the one-horned tribe would come, he had to run away as far as possible and hatch new plans. His goal wasn't the martial king anymore. Just one person. It was the person he didn't think he would meet anymore. Commander, commander, commander. Jiang Wei remembered when he first became the bow god in the Qianhuado according to the contract with the Red Dragon. Back then, he only did the bare minimum and showed only what was required of his skills. He only needed to wait for the Red Dragon to swallow the Qianhuado. It was a boring and bland life. There was only one thing that stimulated him during this time. The war against Arthia. He didn't know why, but the 8 clans that had all been growling at each other suddenly united to pressure the fall of Arthia. Jiang Wei didn't care about what the Qianhuado did, so he didn't pay much attention to it. But when he participated in the war as one of the martial gods, he was shocked. That face didn't belong in the tower. It was the same face as his commander. After observing the man's personality and actions, he saw that it was definitely someone else, but his interest was still piqued. Heaven Wing Cha Jung Woo. He was from Earth, and his name was similar to his commander's. Family, brothers. His commander didn't talk about his private life, so Jiang Wei had no idea about his family relations. But then, Jiang Wei had felt that it was a small world. From then, Jiang Wei was able to participate in the hunt with a happy mind. The battlefield that he had only been watching became his hunting ground. And now, his commander himself was here. To avenge his brother. Yeah. That's understandable. Of course, since he hadn't taken his mask off yet, nothing was confirmed. However, Jiang Wei thought that there was no way he could be mistaken. Those unique eyes, stance, dignity, and habits. Those were all things that couldn't be thrown away. Cain, the name of the hoarder. Why didn't he think of that when he first heard of it? It was the code name that symbolized his commander. It was a name that was fear-inducing both in his allies and enemies. If he found out about the death of his brother, of course he would move. I want to go right over there this instant but, regretfully, he couldn't. Jiang Wei clicked his tongue in regret. Right now, he had to focus on running away from the one-horned tribe. He couldn't fight them anyway. It was dangerous to touch beasts that were excited from the sight of blood. First, I'll hide completely. Until the chase of the one-horned tribe was completely stopped, he was planning on getting by like a dead person. 1 year. 2 years. That was probably enough. He already had experience with hiding. He had hid himself from his inhumane commander and ran into the tower to get away. It was fine to start his official hunt then. When everyone was off guard, being relieved that everything was over, he had to move then. Commander, what we couldn't finish on Earth. Let's end it here. What kind of face would his sister make if she knew he was here? Jiang Wei finished organizing his thoughts and melted into the darkness. Swish. You have earned the endless world of night as your last reward. Yi and Wu grinned looking at the final message. They're giving me a lot. The bureau must have been quite angry because of the red dragon. Actually, the quest wasn't completely over yet. The time given was 3 days, and though the Summer Queen was dead, the clan itself was fine. Although I don't know how long those fine bits can hold up during the time that's left. There were still a lot of parts of the red dragon to rip apart, and it meant he could gain more even karma. But the bureau was giving him all these rewards like they had been waiting for it. Each reward was amazing. There were so many that it was hard for him to even remember all of them. Well, since the bureau is just giving away the wealth of the red dragon, they're not losing anything. Anyhow, there were 2 things that caught his eyes from the rewards. Intrenian and the outer space. The subspace storage room that held the red dragon's wealth, Intrenian. Yi and Wu received 3 more of what he had stolen from Bahal and used efficiently. Each of their contents were different. A treasure storage room with all kinds of gold and silver. A weapons storage room with precious artifacts. An archive filled with grimoires and magic books that the Summer Queen herself had collected. This was what the bureau had given him. Open hollow corner bracket haha. It's really amazing here. Do you know what I just found? Of course, he opened the magic archive to Brahm and Boo. Brahm had sparkling puppy eyes, unlike his usual self. Did you find something nice? Open hollow corner bracket of course. There's a grimoire about bloodlines. This is almost related to supernatural powers, so it must have been hard to organize this much. A draconic species is a draconic species. It must really be amazing if Brahm is surprised. Open hollow corner bracket it is amazing. More than amazing. Also, do you know why this bloodline magic is important now? It's because the genetic blessings that are in the blood are what make the bloodline powerful. That means, close hollow corner bracket. Yi and Wu felt like he could see Brahm grinning from where he was standing. Open hollow corner bracket you can learn it easily. Aren't you feeling the limits of the engraving these days? The engraving spells. He was talking about the rune magic Yi and Wu ordered Boo to engrave, the magic equip. Yi and Wu nodded his head. Like what Brahm said, he felt a limit to rune magic when he used his powers. Open hollow corner bracket make some time later. It's hard the first time, but it'll become easier after that. If you can use the dragon and demon's blessings, it's obvious there'll be clear results. Brahm smiled mischievously. Open hollow corner bracket and also, one more thing. You have to learn bloodline magic to easily move on to dragon language magic. Property-wise, bloodline is a lower tier of language magic. Single quote exclamation mark single quote. Yi and Wu widened his eyes. Dragon language. The magic that was barely opened after the 6th step awakening and used during the 7th step. The path to it was being opened. Open hollow corner bracket other than that, there seemed to be books about the Tree of Sephiroth and the Akashic Records. Not only magic books, but there are different kinds of knowledge. They seem to be found from searching for the truth. The head elder will be happy. And it'll be nice to teach Sesha this. Gosh, it was like he had an illness that related Sesha to everything. Open hollow corner bracket this place might be the knowledge cache that the draconic species tried to protect until the end. Close hollow corner bracket. Yi and Wu thought of somewhere at Brahm's words. Hatma. The place that was known to contain all the knowledge of the draconic species. Did the Summer Queen bring a part of Hatma with her? If so, it would be of great help to Yi and Wu. Open hollow corner bracket anyways, I'll tell you more after looking around. There's probably more special things. And with that, the connection with Brahm was cut off. Yi and Wu laughed in disbelief. This was what he got for being second place, so how much did his teacher, the first place, receive? Yi and Wu was curious, but whatever the Martial King got, the result was obvious. He'll probably have it taken away by the head elder. He would probably tell the Martial King to give it away because they lack the funds to run the village. Thinking of the wronged martial king's face, he felt satisfied. It definitely wasn't because of the bump that was still throbbing on his head. Along with this, the outer space, the endless world of Night's owner was now Yian-Wu. It seemed like the Walpurgisnacht didn't satisfy the conditions to keep it with their fall. An outer space. What should I do with this? This place was a complete mess from the war between the Red Dragon and the One-Horned tribe. He needed to build it up again from scratch to use it. And there was only one way to use an outer space. A clan house. Yian-Wu was deep in thought. A clan. He didn't think he needed one, but with this war, Yian-Wu thought about the concept of organizations again. The Red Dragon and the One-Horned tribe were both organizations. On the other hand, he was alone. He had survived up until this point alone, but now he needed a fence that could protect and help him. Wouldn't an outer space be a good foundation for that? Just when he was thinking about that. Why do you look like you have the world? Are you sleeping? Sleeping? What about the credit? Aren't you paying it back? You're sleeping after spending all that money. Atran glowered at Yian-Wu from opposite of him. Yian-Wu woke up from his train of thought. They were currently moving to the outer sections of the tower after leaving the outer space. Right before they collapsed after the use of the dragon killers and their magic power was drained, Atran called for a carriage to transport them. He felt like he had aged 10 years in a single day, so he wanted to be comfortable at least during the journey. That was also why he was urging Yian-Wu to pay back the credit as soon as the quest was over. It was because the cost of the credit was so immense, that the interest rate was astronomical. The cost was inflating by the minute. But unlike the rushed Atran, Yian-Wu was grinning. Just a few hours ago, Atran was calling him Sir Customer, but now, he was speaking informally to him to his face. Yian-Wu thought his face changed according to money. That's why he's whipped around like a pushover. If Atran knew what Yian-Wu was thinking, he would have fainted. Normally, he had a perfect poker face like any outstanding merchant should, but it was hard for him to control his expression after being used by Yian-Wu several times now. Why are you smiley? Atran was about to stand up furiously, but Yian-Wu suddenly opened the outer space and held something out. Is this enough? 5 Yaltabao safes. Atran quickly bowed deeply, head touching the ground. With this, he could pay back the price and interest and have enough change for himself. Yian-Wu grinned again. He was such a transparent guy. I love you, Mr. Customer. I didn't say I would give it to you yet. Are you kid? I'm not done speaking yet. Yian-Wu put 5 more Yaltabao safes in front of Atran. There were 10 safes in total. Atran's eyes widened and calmly settled down again. He realized that Yian-Wu wanted an additional exchange. Take care of the credit with this, and you can have the remaining amount. This is enough for you to make a comeback, right? It was more than enough. But Atran wasn't able to answer right away. He felt like Yian-Wu was a slithering snake that was wrapping around his neck. You don't seem to be doing this out of goodwill. What do you want in return? I want you to connect me with, by the tablet. Atran blinked. He had been surprised enough already, but now, he wanted to scream. By the tablet. It was a union within their union. It was somewhere that only the greatest merchants out of the mysterious merchants could join. And of course, each of their customers were the top of the top. Only a few within the tower knew of them. There, all kinds of items were exchanged. It was like a secret club in society. It wasn't something that a player on the lower floors could mention, but Yian-Wu was ever so calm. How do you know them? Is that important? Of course not. My bad. I apologize. Merchants should just be faithful to the exchange. Yian-Wu nodded. What I want is just a connection with them. I'll take care of things after that. Atran was silent. That's not something I can decide. When can I expect a reply? 5 days. No, 4 days. No, 2 days. I'll give you a reply in 2 days. Atran's trembling voice became firm. He saw a new path for himself in Yian-Wu's request. This wasn't just something that ended with him being a member of the union, but to become a great merchant. Yian-Wu had tossed the bait, and Atran bit it knowingly. Even though they didn't say it, it was a deal that was good for both of them. Yian-Wu's party split up from Atran's near the One-Horned tribe's village. I'll see you next time if we get the chance. It was fun, thanks to you. The Ice King and Yian-Wu lightly shook hands. Nocturne looked at Yian-Wu and the village with cryptic eyes and quietly turned away. Only some of the tribe members were back at the One-Horned tribe. They were the ones who were hurt in battle and the people that came to help them. They said the rest of them went to chase after the bow god. The bow god, just what is his identity? Yi and Wu momentarily became curious who the bow god was, to be playing with the one-horned tribe like this. He knew how he looked through the diary, but according to the tribe members, his face changed frequently. There was nothing that was known about his identity or goal. Becoming the bow god in the Cheongwado, stabbing the sword god in the back, and becoming enemies with the one-horned tribe. There didn't seem to be any pattern in his movements, and they were all considered things he did impulsively. Even so, he was skilled enough to handle the martial king, so it meant that he was on the level of the 9 kings at the very least. It was impossible that such a person of impulse had lived quietly in the tower for all this time, even considering there were a lot of people in the tower. However, Yi and Wu took his attention off of the bow god. Even if he tried to run away, he wouldn't be able to get far with the heated martial king on his trail. Yi and Wu returned to his room. His room, it was the first place of his after entering the tower. Yi and Wu glanced around and leaned against the rocking chair. The tension from the battle released. It was a short but sweet rest. Just then, open corner bracket master, everything is ready. Bu popped up from his shadow and bowed. His internal sight had become different after swallowing the last philosopher's stone. All kinds of emotions came off of him. Curiosity, expectation, joy, ecstasy. He was curious about what would happen now. A rest like this is nice. But other kinds of rests are also nice. Yi and Wu stood up from the rocking chair with the same eyes as Bu. The Summer Queen and Vieira Dune. It was time to squeeze their souls out. Chapter 247 A Turbulent World 4. Yi and Wu stepped inside the portal. As he did, darkness filled his vision. Swoosh. When he activated his holy fire, the darkness shifted back, revealing a large space. There was a long wall, and the ceiling was very high. And in there, clack, clack, talk talk talk, undeads were moving around busily. Skeletons hung from the ceiling and the walls, casting magic circles, and ghouls and zombies ran around busily on the ground with something in their hands. They were the materials to be used for the magic circles. The flying banshees and specters were touching the areas that couldn't be reached. They also immediately appeared where things were going wrong and fixed it. Kung, kung, kung. In the midst of all that, a stone golem walked by Yi and Wu with materials of iron on its back. It's basically a dungeon. Yi and Wu smiled wryly. The undead, ghost monsters, and even the golem that could be used as a guardian. If the atmosphere was a bit more depressing, it would be a perfect dungeon that appeared in RPG games. Actually, this was an Intrenian. It was the weapons storage room out of the 3 that he received from the bureau. He ordered the contents to be moved into the treasure storage room so Bu could use it as a lab. On top of the supplies, books, and experiment materials he got from the Walpurgisnacht, he even had the Summer Queen's magic archive. He couldn't neglect them as he had any more. There was a need to keep them organized. Also, Bu seemed to want a lab of his own now. He had grown rapidly after absorbing the Philosopher's Stones and the souls of the witches, and as his level increased, his faint consciousness slowly came back to him. Aside from that, magicians were beings who searched for the truth until they died. Liches were those who still had those desires after death. Of course they would want to further their knowledge of the field, and for that, they needed a space of their own. But in terms of loyalty, Bu was second to none. Also, because he didn't really talk that much, he had never spoken about these things. If Yi and Wu told him to die, he really would. Because Yi and Wu was thankful for that, he gave Bu an Intrenian, hoping it would be a sufficient reward. It's a good thing I gave it to him. Bu had summoned about 100 undead to get to work. Magic circles were cast on the ceiling and walls, and he had set up different equipment in different sections. Yi and Wu only recognized them as things that came from researching the Philosopher's Stone or as skills from the witches. He didn't know more than that. Because the Summer Queen had created Intrenian herself, even with all the undead bustling around, it was large enough to still be untouched in some places. But at this rate, it would probably become a full-blown dungeon soon. Something suddenly occurred to Yi and Wu. If this is going to be a dungeon anyway, wouldn't it be better to make it large? It can be used more efficiently that way as well. Just when he was deep in thought about the use of the dungeon. Open corner bracket I. You're here, master. Open corner bracket the subspace made by a dragon. It's definitely impressive in size. Open hollow corner bracket don't ask me to do this ever again. And that lich, he looks so easygoing on the outside, why is he so picky? Just then, a tired Shannon, Hanryong, and Rebecca appeared with deep sighs. The monster portents that plodded after them bowed to Yi and Wu and quickly disappeared into the shadows. To be exact, it seemed like they were running away. Yi and Wu unknowingly grinned. He sent his subordinates to help Boo. It seemed like Boo had used them without giving them any rest. Open corner bracket. It's not the time to be laughing right now. You're being tricked right now. He's only like that on the outside, you don't know how dark he. Close corner bracket. Just when Shannon was angrily complaining. Open corner bracket. You're here, master. Boo's shadow suddenly popped out from next to Shannon. Boo heads clacked as he bowed to Yi and Wu and momentarily glared at Shannon. His inferno sight flared like he was asking Shannon if he was tattling on him. Shannon glared at Boo like he didn't do anything wrong and looked away. He was definitely in a higher position than Boo as a death noble, but since a while ago, it became hard to talk to Boo. It was a threat that he felt instinctively. Boo started to emanate an aura that the others didn't as he grew. It was like he couldn't be touched. Even so, in front of Yi and Wu, that aura disappeared, and he only showed fierce loyalty. It was unbelievable for the others to watch. And looking at Boo, they all had the same thought. Just what was Boo when he was alive? Although a part of his memories had probably returned to him, Boo never mentioned anything about when he was alive. I didn't think their hierarchy would be like this. Yi and Wu also expected that there would be some kind of order among his subordinates as he gained more followers. He thought Shannon, who was a death noble, or Hanryong, who reached great peaks during his life, would have the authority. But looking at it now, he was surprised to see Boo somewhat in charge. This kind of situation wasn't bad for Yi and Wu either. Although Boo was quiet, his thoughts were deep. With his various magic, he could be a great help whenever it was needed, and he also led the monster army during war smoothly. He was a faithful and competent, second in command. More than anything, his loyalty was the most outstanding. It was a lunatic kind of blind loyalty. This was a condition that any subordinate should have. He would be easier to control than the unpredictable Shannon or the unreadable Hanryong. Also, he's my first subordinate. Still smiling, Yi and Wu tossed 2 of the rings on his finger to Boo. Take it, open corner bracket master. This is. Boo carefully accepted the rings and looked at Yi and Wu's face. On his hand, there was already a ring like what he just gave Boo. It was the ring to open Intrenian. This, and the other 2 that I just gave you, you can combine them into one, right? Open corner bracket. If I adjust it's definitely possible. As we climb the floors, we'll be able to grow, and we'll gain more things. So before that, complete the dungeon in order for us to use it whenever we can. Boo immediately understood what Yi and Wu was saying. The greater the dungeon, the more they could own. They could increase the number of workers they had, skeletons, zombies, and ghouls, and continue to strengthen them. Skeletons to skeleton warriors or mages, zombies to giant zombies, specters and banshees to phantoms, and so on. The undead that Yi and Wu used after declaring his domain were just the corpses that he found lying on the battlefield. But if they were kept here and strengthened, then summoned on a large scale instantly, it would be destructive, and I can also summon a few as needed. When attacking enemy bases, they could open the dungeon midair and surprise their enemies. They could use this for many battle tactics. Also, that wasn't the only benefit a large dungeon had. If it was big enough, they could conduct large-scale experiments that they couldn't before. The bodily experiments the Walpurgisnacht had progressed with was only possible because they had the space and the money. Yi and Wu had focused on this point. Since they were making a dungeon anyway, it should be made larger. Boo would also grow faster. There wasn't any problem with the funds either. Just by taking what the Summer Queen had, they would have a few years' worth of wealth of a large clan. Open corner bracket. But, master, Yi and Wu flashed the Intrenian ring that he used often. I can put the items I need in here. You don't have to worry. However, move everything that used to be in there in here. Open corner bracket. Thank you. Boo bowed. His shoulders were trembling. The master who had given him life and power was showing him generosity again. How should he repay this? Open corner bracket. Master, what about me? Don't I get anything? Shannon, who had been silently watching the 2, suddenly burst in between them. Yi and Wu glanced at Shannon, and lightly sighed as he moved deeper inside of the dungeon. Open corner bracket. Hey, master. What's the meaning behind that sigh? What does it mean? Shannon jumped up and down as he chased after Yi and Wu. Open corner bracket. This is it. Boo led them to a deep place inside the dungeon. However, this place was isolated from the other sections and felt closed off. The smell of death filled the air, and there were familiar magic circles engraved on the walls and the ceiling. They were transmutation circles and sealing circles. This is enough. Yi and Wu confirmed that the magic circles all worked and summoned the soul of the Summer Queen from his collection. Walk. Black energy was instantly poured into the soul, and it changed into a spirit. There were limits to communicating with a soul, so Yi and Wu had given it some power like Bahal and Leonte. Since she was the Summer Queen, she was still dangerous as a spirit. She had almost escaped the bind of the black bracelet as a mere soul. It was even more dangerous now. And as he had expected. Open corner bracket heaven wing. As soon as the Summer Queen snapped to attention, she ran at Yi and Wu. She didn't have a clear existence, so she was in her human polymorph form. Her transparent long hair stretched out, and her two eyes turned sharp. The despair of the Black King activated to put her under painful pressure, but she didn't care about that. She just wanted to kill Yi and Wu for putting her in this state. However, crack, crack, Boo cast a spell as if he had been waiting, and the sealing circles activated to pour out divine iron. It was a sealing circle that had bound a lower-level demon. The Summer Queen couldn't escape it in her current condition. Open corner bracket let go. Let go of me, Heaven Wing, I'll kill you. The Summer Queen resisted, tied up in the divine iron like it was a cocoon. But the more she struggled, the tighter the divine iron became. Open corner bracket ack. Had she ever experienced humiliation like this? She had lived the last thousands of years as a great draconic species, and she had ruled the tower with pride. However, not only did she die after being mocked by a lowly being, but she also became a ghost after dying, and the fact that she was tied up here made her go crazy. It was humiliating and unpleasant. She would kill herself if she could, but she was too tightly bound by the despair of the Black King. She wasn't the owner of herself anymore. Yi and Wu was. This might be why it's called despair. Not being dead even after you died. Looking at the Summer Queen jumping around like she was going mad, Yi and Wu burst out laughing. He couldn't feel more satisfied than this. She acted like she would rule the tower forever, then she came tumbling down to this pathetic state. The end of the last draconic species was a sight to see. Open corner bracket I said to let me go. The Summer Queen screamed, eyes red. If she couldn't kill herself, she wanted to go mad, at the very least. But the outstanding rationality of the draconic species didn't allow her. Even if she had symptoms of insanity, all Yi and Wu had to do was input black energy inside of her to clear her mind. Clack. Yi and Wu took off his mask and slowly approached the Summer Queen. The Summer Queen resisted even more as he did. Heaven Wing, even after death, he made her suffer, and now he didn't leave her with any chance of escape. Just what was the thing in front of her? The Summer Queen couldn't believe her eyes. Cha Jung-woo was definitely dead. It was something she confirmed herself. It made sense if the thing in front of her was an undead, like her. But the thing in front of her was definitely a living, breathing human. She was confused at the phenomenon she couldn't understand. And when Yi and Wu lowered himself to meet the Summer Queen's eyes, lifting her chin to smirk at her, the Summer Queen's resistance stopped like it was a lie. Instead, she glowered at Yi and Wu with still eyes. Open corner bracket you're not Heaven Wing. She did lose a part of her powers, but she still had some skills left. The person she saw with her draconic eyes was similar to Jung-woo, but it wasn't him. He was something similar. Cha Yi and Wu, that's my name. The Summer Queen realized who Yi and Wu was at that moment. Open corner bracket did Heaven Wing have a brother? He did. Open corner bracket I should have ripped you to shreds when I first saw you. Sorry. That's not me, but you. Ismanios. Yi and Wu opened eyes that were similar to the Summer Queen's and growled. I'm going to rip you apart and swallow you. Demonism began to flow from his eyes through the intense fury. But I won't eat you easily. When you're trapped in despair, when you realize that there's no one to save you, and you realize there's no hope in waiting. I'll eat you then. Yi and Wu had already thought of how to take care of the Summer Queen. He could use her as his subordinate, but he didn't want to let his enemy live. Rather, it was better to swallow her soul with Batory's vampiric sword and grow the dragon's blessing. Open corner bracket try doing whatever you can. Do you think I'll even lift an eyebrow? She was almost insane, but the Summer Queen was still the Summer Queen. She would never destroy herself or surrender. She snickered at Yi and Wu as if telling him to give it his all. But Yi and Wu tossed the same laugh back at her. We'll see. Open corner bracket what? I'm curious if you'll be alright seeing the body you cherished so much being ripped apart in front of you. Open corner bracket what kind of? Just then, Boo lightly waved his hand in the air. The darkness around them disappeared and a large glass cage appeared. The Summer Queen's body was in a purple liquid inside of it. There were still injuries all over it from the fight with the Martial King, but her ripped arms and wings were reattached, and the major wounds were now almost healed. Its eyes were closed, so if someone saw, they would probably think she was just sleeping. Open corner bracket C, could it be? The Summer Queen belatedly realized what Yianwu was thinking. There were countless pumps and hoses connected to the glass cage. From one side, red blood was flowing out, and from the other, black poison was being inputted. There's nothing to throw away in the corpse of a dragon. The eyes can be used as magic power sources, the scales and leather as armor, and the bones as unbreakable weapons. Also, its conductivity of magic power is second to none. Open corner bracket stop. From now on, I'm going to dismember your body in front of you. It'll probably take some time since it's firm. I'll have to slowly take it apart in the liquid. Open corner bracket I said to stop. And I'm also planning on showing you what the pieces will make. Oh, don't worry, I won't take everything apart. Open corner bracket just kill me. Kill me. Yianwu lifted a corner of his mouth seeing the Summer Queen scream. Shouldn't I leave the bones to make a bone dragon? Open corner bracket kill me. Please see. The Summer Queen wanted to escape from this humiliation using any means possible. Even if your opponent was your great enemy, there was an unspoken rule of not touching dead people. It was the last sign of respect towards someone who was dead. But Yianwu didn't seem to have any of those thoughts. Not only would he rip her body apart, but he would make her corpse into a bone dragon. It meant he would use her body even when she was dead. If she could kill herself, she would willingly die over and over again. However, her soul was already bound, and she didn't have any freedom. This couldn't happen. A great dragon, a descendant of the superior draconic species. She couldn't bear this humiliation. Open corner bracket you're also a descendant of dragons. How can you do that as a dragon human? The Summer Queen stopped screaming and suddenly became speechless. Unless you escape that way of thinking, you'll never know. Ever. You'll probably die suffering by yourself. Why did she suddenly remember what Cha Jungwoo said? Way of thinking. Way of thinking. Cha Jungwoo had told her to escape the shadow of the dragons. To live her own life. If she didn't, it would lead to her own destruction. Was that what he meant? The thing that made her suffer wasn't that way of thinking. It was the ghost of Cha Jungwoo. Tien, way of thinking, and ghost mean the same word in Korean. Poor pitiful Ismenios. The last dragon. Open corner bracket let go of me. The more the Summer Queen struggled, the more Yianwu smiled coldly. Pause. The Summer Queen stopped her movement and glared at Yianwu with boiling eyes. Open corner bracket what do you want? Looking at her, Yianwu spoke icily. The reason why Jungwoo had to die. Chapter 248 A Turbulent World 5. She was only a soul, but all kinds of emotions flickered in her eyes. Yianwu didn't miss it. As I thought, there's something I don't know. His brother had written in detail about what he had been through in the diary. There were so many things that it was a wonder how he had learned about them. However, there were also some sections Yianwu didn't understand. The reason why his brother had to be betrayed was one of them. At first, he just thought that it was because the others were wary of his brother after he became as strong as one of the 9 kings. That was how his brother recorded it in the diary as well. He didn't go into depth. But these days, Yianwu was beginning to have questions. Jungwoo had the draconic eyes. He couldn't completely read others' thoughts, but he could still tell what kind of emotions they were feeling. They were wary of him after becoming as strong as one of the 9 kings, but Arthea had a firm foundation from the beginning. It wasn't something that would crumble so easily. Leonte and Bahal were just small pond fish who grabbed the hands of the 9 kings that offered it because they were jealous of Jungwoo's strength, and for his draconic eyes, it can be explained that Viera Dune hid herself through mind control, since her ability to control someone's mind was among the best. But it doesn't make sense that the 9 kings, who would fight at the drop of a hat, suddenly held hands with each other. What happened? The Summer Queen's eyes became deeper. Open corner bracket if I tell you will you kill me? I'll listen to what you have to say first. The Summer Queen spoke with a glare. Open corner bracket it's because of the Soulstone. Soulstone, what was she talking about? Yianwu crinkled his face at the word he didn't know. Open corner bracket Heaven Wing had Lucille's Soulstone. Quote exclamation mark quote. Lucille, a being more widely known as the one who brought light, Lucifer. Even though Lucille was a supernatural being, Lucille couldn't belong to gods or demons, light or darkness, and he just roamed around. Then, 1,000 years ago, Lucille's wings were ripped apart by the gods and demons, and Lucille fell. The specific reason and process were unknown. There was only a short sentence about it in a legend that Lucille fell after losing wings. The Soul Stone was a remnant of what a great being changed its form to. If his brother had this. You were greedy. Yi and Wu laughed dumbfoundedly. The Summer Queen pressed her lips together. However, it wasn't like he didn't understand what they were trying to do. If it was the Soul Stone of Lucille, depending on how it was used, a player could become supernatural for the first time in the history of the tower. Even if that didn't happen, they would have a tremendous power in your hands. In the end, it was because of greed. Everything was because of greed. Then why didn't Jungwoo tell me that? For what reason? Lucille's Soul Stone, just what secret did it hold for his brother to not even mention it? If it was what put him in that pathetic state, there was no reason why he wouldn't say anything about it. Also, what had he been trying to do with it? The gods and demons know this too. It was hard to understand what went on in the minds of those who silently looked down from the 98th floor. They wouldn't want Lucille to be resurrected after going through all that trouble of pulling Lucille's wings out. All kinds of thoughts flashed through his head, but Yi and Wu didn't think about it too deeply. Instead, he asked the Summer Queen a question. Then the Soul Stone, where did it go? I don't know either. What? The Summer Queen smirked. If I knew, I would have taken it. And I wouldn't be here like this. Right. They went full circle. They were back to where they started again. Yi and Wu's eyes turned cold as well. No, you have to know. What are you saying? Think of every tiny thing you can think of. Then I'll let you rest in peace. The Summer Queen struggled after hearing Yi and Wu's thoughts. Her chains became tighter again. That's different from what you promised. You said you would kill me if I told you. So you better remember. You. Yi and Wu ignored the Summer Queen's scream and nodded his head at Boo. Boo slowly approached the Summer Queen. A dark shadow covered her head. ACKKKK. A piercing scream rang from where Yi and Wu just left. Yi and Wu glanced back and turned his head. The 98th floor will be in a mess. Brahm had an evil look in his eyes. The death of the Summer Queen. The destruction of the last dragon would be a hot topic of discussion among the gods and demons. Gods, demons, dragons, and giants. Two of the species that had once ruled the tower were now extinct. He was especially curious about what kind of reaction the demons would have since they were natural enemies of the dragons. Yi and Wu thought the reason why he didn't get any messages was that there was a serious atmosphere on the 98th floor. Or it's because of that Soul Stone or whatever. Yi and Wu turned to Brahm. Are you finished organizing? There was nothing to touch. Everything was neatly sectioned off, so it was clean. Still, there can't be a greater goldmine than this. So I was thinking. Brahm faded off, looking to where Boo was. Please speak. Ahem, can't you make me a lab or a dungeon too? It's not because I'm jealous. That is, we gained a lot of things this time. So I need a new lab, and it'll be nice for Sesha and Ananta after she wakes up. It's definitely not because I'm envious or anything like that, but it'll be nice. Brahm continued to babble like he was a bit embarrassed bringing it up. It was unlike him. It seemed like he was jealous of Boo's dungeon. Yi and Wu burst out laughing unintentionally. He was amazed to see a new side of Brahm, who he thought was always cold. Hey, it's not something to laugh at. This definitely isn't for me, but to help you in the future. The authority of the outer space, endless world of night, has been given to Brahm. A new function is available. Currently, the rate of destruction of the outer space, endless world of night, is 96.3%. Begin the restoration process as soon as possible. The longer it is neglected, the faster it'll be destroyed. And that's why. Brahm widened his eyes at the message that popped up in front of him. Yi and Wu spoke with a soft smile. Wouldn't cleaning this be of greater help to me than Intrinian? Actually, the condition is so bad that I don't know where to touch first. In fact, the endless world of night was a pain in the ass for Yi and Wu. Because the Red Dragon and the One-Horned Tribe turned it into a bare plain, it was hard to use at the moment. But he couldn't just sell it either. There might be traces of the Walpurgisnacht that they hadn't found yet, and he was hesitant to give up an outer space like this. The outer space would have many uses. Clan house. The phrase repeated inside Yi and Wu's head. That was why Yi and Wu decided to hand over the endless world of night to Brahm. Brahm was skilled enough to create his own imaginary world in the middle of a stage. Not only did he know alchemy, but he also knew about architecture, so he would be a great help in restoring the outer space. If he can set the outer space up as an imaginary world, that'd be nice too. We can just change the original coordinates. Sesha and Ananta can stay here. With Bu in charge of growing and strengthening his forces, Brahm could take care of their internal affairs. Brahm coughed lightly after reading Yi and Wu's mind. This was a greater responsibility than he expected. He would be able to create a larger lab than what Bu had. Brahm's magic was on a larger scale than Bu's, so he needed more space. Ahem, as you wish. Alright, I'll take care of this outer space and restore it. Galliard isn't busy with anything at the moment, so we can do it together. Thank you. It's nothing. We're all helping each other. Brahm played along with Yi and Wu, who was boosting his mood. But as you already know, the endless world of night is humongous, probably because it's a world of witches. It'll be quite expensive. Are you okay with that? Why would I have asked to be connected with by the table? You already have plans. Yes, sir. Brahm's eyes became deeper. The path ahead won't be easy. You're basically exposed to the outside now. With his contribution in the endless world of night, the entire tower would know that he was strong. Whatever he did in the future would gain attention. However, it's alright. Yi and Wu cut Brahm off firmly. If they attack, I can just destroy them. I feel better since you're that confident. The path you're trying to take. I'll be by your side, helping you. Then with this, we're almost done. Shouldn't we pull out the main dish now? Brahm closed the status window of the outer space and looked at Yi and Wu. His eyes were settled down. Yi and Wu nodded and lightly waved his hand. A soul popped up midair, and like the Summer Queen, black energy swirled around it, turning it into an evil spirit. Viera Dune appeared with a foggy appearance. But unlike the Summer Queen, Viera Dune wasn't as powerful, so she just stood there blankly. Yi and Wu moved in front of her and took his mask off. Viera Dune's unfocused eyes suddenly came to life. Open corner bracket U. Viera Dune shouted something, but a shadow stretched out from the ground to bind her. Poopapook. She screamed horrifically and fell to the ground. The energy of a monster portent entered and left Viera Dune's body. The pain that she was feeling couldn't be compared to anything you could feel in your physical body. It was like her body was repetitively split apart and put back together again. The feeling of fire burning her body made her want to die. Open corner bracket KRRRK. KRK. Yi and Wu looked down coldly at Viera Dune. He didn't want to talk with her at all. Would you like to go first, then? Chapter 249 A Turbulent World 6. Brahm nodded when Yi and Wu yielded his turn. His eyes weren't those of an old man happy after receiving some work, but of the exile who was once a god. There wasn't anyone who had a greater grudge against Viera Dune than him. Sesha and Ananta, his precious family had suffered for a long time because of her. Yi and Wu readily yielded to Brahm because he knew that. Brahm spoke in a dry tone. Viera, open corner bracket do you want I? Viera, answer me, Viera, quote, open corner bracket let me go. Brahm continued to speak to her, but she couldn't get herself together. He smiled coldly. If you can't wake yourself up, I'll help you. We have a lot to talk about. Brahm waved his hand in the air and pulled something out from subspace. It was a flask with a strange liquid in it. It was tightly sealed with a cork. This is called a Yonsen elixir. I made it because I was curious if a ghoul form monster can be injured. I don't know if it'll work on you. Brahm twisted the cork off. White smoke came out with a fizzing sound. He tilted the flask above Viera Dune's head. Open corner bracket ack. Viera Dune stiffened her back and shouted. Her soul was melting. The liquid stuck to her body and began to destroy her from the inside. It's more effective than I thought. I didn't know by how much, because I hadn't tried it out yet. I suppose I can decrease the acidity a bit. And this is healing water, so it'll help with recovering. Try this too. Open corner bracket cuck, Kyuk. The healing water did indeed recover her body, but as it mixed with the elixir, it became slimy and added more pain. Viera Dune tossed her body around, but the liquid didn't move. What will we do if you're so weak? My daughter probably suffered torture like this as well. If you're this tired after a few experiments, there will be no point to this. You can do it. Let's start again. Brahm's experiments continued. Every time the subspace opened, new tools poured out. Since it was a soul they had gotten after much difficulty, he didn't forget to carefully record everything, either. It was like he was trying to do all the experiments that he was behind on. Open corner bracket please. I'll tell you everything, so please. Vieira Dune couldn't help but wake up. No, she had to force herself to. If she didn't, the pain would be endless. Her subconscious woke her up to be less in pain. No, no, it's not over yet. But Brahms shook his head and crushed Vieira Dune's hopes. Open corner bracket Great Mother. Kidnapping Sesha and Ananta was for Great Mother. Vieira Dune began to spit out facts they didn't ask for. It was the only way the pain would lessen. Open corner bracket The experiments I did were to complete the vessel. I did all kinds of things to complete the vessel. I'm sorry, so please. That's what you have to do to heal Ananta. She was spewing things out, so most of her babbling didn't make sense, but Yin Wu, who was standing in the back, was able to get the gist of what she was saying after combining it with the information he got from the other witches' souls. It's as I thought. Was she trying to summon Mother Earth, who's said to have birthed the witches? The being that the witches called their witches wasn't a defined god, but more of a concept. Her name, Whore of Babylon, was more famous, and other than that, she was known as Tiamat, Ymir, Ishtar, Inanna, Kybal, Prithvi, Grandmother Mago. However, she had a name that was more famous than the others. Gaia, also known as Yama, but her personality is quite different from being motherly. Mother Earth was one of the only great gods that were here since the beginning of time, but every time she showed herself to the world, she always had a different appearance, and it was hard to tell what she was thinking. Vieira Dune was the only person who Mother Earth was interested in. No one knew the reason why. Whether it was because of her ability or something else, one thing for sure was that Vieira Dune had become stronger with the favor of Mother Earth and controlled the Walpurgisnacht because of it. But, all contact with Mother Earth was suddenly cut off. The Walpurgisnacht tried to wake her sleep. Mother Earth wasn't that well known, but she sometimes showed herself on the earth. She had never cut off contact with Vieira Dune either. Her sudden disappearance would definitely have been greatly frustrating for Vieira Dune. That was why Vieira Dune decided to take a gamble, to call Mother Earth to the ground. She considered it a nice decision because she knew that Mother Earth was interested in the lower world. Still, since she gave them a divine revelation, it's not like she completely disappeared. What happened? There was more than one thing that was strange. There were a lot of unclear sections. But it's not completely mysterious. Yin Wu suddenly had a thought. His brother had Lucille's soulstone, but it suddenly disappeared. If even the Summer Queen didn't know who took it, wouldn't it be someone who was closest to him? For example, a lover. And if that lover had done something for her god. Single quote. Yin Wu's eyes darkened. Whatever the reason was, it didn't change the fact that Vieira Dune had tried to use Sesha and Ananta as a vessel. After that, Vieira Dune continued to spill the secrets of Mother Earth, what she ate until now, how the witches were created, and all kinds of useless information. Thankfully, a way to cure Ananta was included in all that. Even so, Brahm didn't stop his experiments. Vieira Dune was furious having her body melted and healed over and over again. Open corner bracket I told you everything. So why aren't you killing me? Then, she whipped her head in another direction. She glared at Yin Wu, then laughed awkwardly. Open corner bracket Jung Wu, it's me, Vieira, who you loved. Didn't you miss me, honey? You longed for me until the end, right? Sorry, I really I was wrong, so please, forgive me now. No, let's start again. I'll do everything you ask me to. I'll throw away the witches, or even Great Mother if you tell me to. I'll be faithful to you and Sesha. Vieira Dune couldn't continue with her words. No matter what she said, Yin Wu's gaze didn't waver. His expression didn't change either. In fact, her eyes were trembling. The corners of her mouth quivered. Open corner bracket H, honey. You like this right? My chest, my lap. Don't you want to lie down? I'm a little hurt, but it's okay. Don't you want to lie down? Quote. Open corner bracket say something. Curse me if you want to. Or kill me. This is enough revenge. It's over. You're alive, so what more do you want? There's nothing more I can do from. Do you really? Yin Wu cut Vieira Dune's furious screams off. He spoke in a low voice. Do you really think it's over? Open corner bracket you're not Jung Wu. Brother, yeah, he said he had a brother that he left behind in his homeland. Then you. Jung Wu closed his eyes, longing for you until the very end. He was stupid, he didn't hate you even after that. But now I know for sure. He was really stupid. Yi and Wu slowly stood up and strode to where Viera Dune was. Brahm stepped aside. He lost to AB asterisk 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 that only amounted to this. Ha. Open corner bracket yeah, your brother lost to AB asterisk 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 that only amounted to this. But didn't you ever wonder? Why I or the other comrades turned our backs? Why we ran away, why we stabbed his back, have you ever thought about it? Yi and Wu paused in his steps. Viera Dune raised a corner of her mouth. She thought her words had gotten to him. Whatever she did, she was going to die anyway. She wanted to put up one last stand. Open corner bracket if you have half a brain, isn't it reasonable to suspect the reason why everyone left him? Then isn't it logical that the person that made everyone leave had a problem? Ho ho ho, how stupid. You only think your younger brother is kind and innocent, Quote. Open corner bracket of course not. We were greedy too, but Cha Jung-woo was worse. He had to have everything to be satisfied, and he had to step forward himself. He was like that from the beginning. He hoarded and kept everything to himself. We were sick of that. You know. Her laughs became louder. She giggled hysterically. Viera Dune pulled out her specialty, mind control magic, to shake Yi and Wu even just a little. She was trying to break his trust in his brother and crumble his world so that she could interfere with it. Less than mind plunder, greater than. Unlike body transfer, which moved onto a body that was prepared in advance, it was a power that blended the user into the ego data of someone else. In other words, it was a virus, one that made her opponent into her servant. And Yi and Wu actually looked like he was being affected. She might be able to live. Viera Dune began to hope. If she could control Yi and Wu's mind, she could leave this prison and dream of being newly resurrected. Open corner bracket there were a lot of people sacrificed because of him. He was the worst human who only knew himself. We all made that decision because we thought we would be in danger as well so. You're done with the bull asterisk 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 right. But her hopes were dashed. Open corner bracket what? Yi and Wu's hand coldly shot out and grabbed Viera Dune's head. Crunch. She didn't even have a body, but the sound of something breaking rang out. It was the sound of a soul being shaken. Viera was trapped in a horrifying pain again. Her eyes, which he could see between his fingers, were bloodshot. So, did you think I'd be shaken by something like that? Yi and Wu twisted her head inside. Her head was crushed, and her shoulders were pushed down, crumpling all the way down to the ground. Open corner bracket it hurts. It hurts, I said. Let go of me, ack. Human relationships can't be smooth all the time. But that doesn't mean people stab each other in the back like you guys did. They talk it out. Open corner bracket ack. Viera Dune struggled, but Yi and Wu's pressure continued to spread throughout her body. Black energy poured out like blood, turning into an unknown substance. So if you're going to talk about bloody nonsense like that, crack, go tell it to your great mother, or whatever she's called. Yi and Wu clenched his fist. With the sound of air escaping, her body exploded like a balloon. Black energy spread out. The last of Viera Dune's vestige twirled crazily in the air. Looking at that, Yi and Wu spoke in a cold voice with his draconic eyes open. So throw away this stupid skin and appear for real, Viera. That moment, wee. The vestige and the black energy combined, staining the world into black. And from that, a large being suddenly shot out above him. It was a being that made Yi and Wu look like a mere firefly. However, it was somehow familiar to him. Above the sky, a pair of eyes burst open. They were the same white eyes that Viera Dune had. There weren't any pupils, but he could feel its gaze on him. Mother Earth. Or, to be exact, the monster that had used her God-given powers and the Soul Stone, even swallowing the god she served, was here. Open hollow corner bracket you brothers have always been such a nuisance. Chapter 250 A Turbulent World 6. Someday, I want to climb to the top of the tower. Where even the gods and demons can't reach. Aren't you curious about what's there? So Jung-woo, if you're in my way, I might throw you away. You know me, right? Stay with me until the end. Viera Dune had said it as if it were a joke, but when his brother got in her way, she turned her back on him, just as she said she would. That was how great her obsession with climbing to the top was. His brother had asked again and again why she was obsessed with getting to the top. He didn't understand her hate for Alphorone and the Summer Queen on the 77th and 76th floor. However, even when asked those questions, Viera Dune just smiled, and she never replied. Viera Dune was always like that. If there was something going on, she just smiled, and no one could know what she was thinking. His brother was afraid of her sometimes because of that, but he thought her love, at the very least, was real. His draconic eyes told him that it was real as well. And then he was stabbed by a sword. Anyhow, no one knew where her obsession for the top came from. The moment that Yi Wu absorbed Viera Dune with Batory's vampiric sword, he realized that she achieved her wish. The person he had absorbed was definitely Viera Dune. However, it was only an empty shell. It was only the shedding she had left behind. Remnants. Or a trace. The real Viera Dune had been absent from the lower world, for a long time at that. Through her connected channel with Mother Earth, Viera Dune had raised her ego data little by little. Body transfer and mind plunder. If these two powers were used appropriately, she could copy ego data however much she wanted. Using this as the foundation, Viera had slowly swallowed Mother Earth, like a virus that secretly crept onto a computer and swallowed the hardware. Of course, in front of the great being of Mother Earth, Viera Dune was only a small existence. No matter how much she grew, a sandcastle would easily crumble in front of a large wave. But still, if the sandcastle grew infinitely and became firm, and if Viera Dune's ego data continued to invade Mother Earth's, and if it controlled the godly world, then, could she sweep everything away? Mind control wasn't just something that was applied to your opponents. It could be used on gods and even yourself. Viera Dune's infinite mind became united, and it eventually succeeded in swallowing Mother Earth. Of course, there were other things that helped with this. The Philosopher's Stone and the Dragon Heart. Even the Soul Stone. Viera Dune had only left the basic Philosopher's Stone behind with the Walpurgisnacht. She had already completed most of it. And on top of this, she had something else. It was clear that she had taken half of Jung Woo's Dragon Heart and used it. So that was the reason why she stabbed him in the back. His brother's Dragon Heart was actually something inherited from the ancient dragon Kalitas. If things had gone smoothly, as Kalitas intended, there might have been the resurrection of a new draconic species. He might have been trying for a new supernatural ability for the draconic species after they fell to the lower world from the fight with the gods and demons. At first, Yi Wu just thought it was so she could have a magic power source, but looking back at it now, he realized she had been planning to swallow Mother Earth from back then. She probably used the Soul Stone in the same way. Lucille was someone the gods and demons were afraid of as well. If it was a Soul Stone with pieces of such an existence, it would have been extremely helpful in raising her level. And with the Dragon Heart, Philosopher's Stone, and even Lucille's Soul Stone, Viera Dune was able to use the infinite amount of magic power to back up her huge consciousness. She had become an apostle that swallowed up her master. It was a crazy idea that no one would have thought about. Also, it was possible because Mother Earth was a concept, and didn't have a specific identity. And the reason why the channel with the Mother Earth had been cut off. It was simple: when Viera Dune invaded Mother Earth, she didn't have time to think about other things. But even though he guessed up to this point, he didn't believe it. There was no case in which a player had taken the throne of a god after the tower was created. There wasn't even anyone who knew how to use holiness, people only guessed that Alpharon was close. Viera Dune probably hadn't completed synchronization with Mother Earth yet. Even if she was the controller, there would be defined limits if her level was too low. Raising her limits would most likely require a lot of time. Showing herself like this was a great loss for her. But there was one reason she still showed up. It was probably because she wanted to see Yi Wu, the person who was behind all this. Is the air above as good as you thought it would be? Open hollow corner bracket. It's great. It's air that mere mortals won't ever know. Was it because she was the combination of countless different ego data? Her voice sounded like thousands of people were speaking at the same time. It was loud, and it continued to ring out. Sure, I'm sure you like it. Since you got it by throwing everyone you knew away. The destruction of the Walpurgisnacht was basically a result of the betrayal of their leader and the god they served. But she didn't seem to care. Actually, Yi Wu didn't expect her to. She was someone who wouldn't blink an eye to sacrifice others for what she wanted. Open hollow corner bracket. I only came down to warn you. Yi Wu felt the ringing in the air. He felt cold. His dragon scales stood up, but his eyes were calm. Warn me. Open hollow corner bracket. Yes. To warn you. I don't have any wish to become involved with you brothers. I don't have any regrets of my life from the lower world. Quote. Open hollow corner bracket. So don't pay any attention to me. The Viera Dune in the lower world is already dead. No. Your revenge is over. Don't be annoying. She sounded bored. It was an annoyed tone of voice, like she considered Yi and Wu a little fly that was bothering her. Yi and Wu was flabbergasted. Her attitude of having a one-woman show was unbelievable. He was also a bit annoyed at his brother for not being able to see people as they were. To Viera, Cha Jung-woo was nothing more than a memory. He was only a stepping stool for her to go higher. She kicked away any emotions she felt just to become a god. She threw away her body, her heart, and her memories. Jung-woo's life was only a plaything. Crunch. Yi and Wu ground his teeth as he glared at Viera. Then I'll also warn you. Open hollow corner bracket you. A mere mortal. She snorted. The difference between Yi and Wu and Viera was too great. She might even be greater than Hermes or the Monkey King's shedding. She was so powerful that he didn't know if he could ever reach her, but Yi and Wu still growled with hard eyes. Wait for me there. It won't take that long. Open hollow corner bracket, do you know what you're saying? Sure. Open hollow corner bracket, no. You don't know. You're talking about murdering a god. You don't know what that means to gods. No, I'm saying it because I know what I'm saying. Just then, countless messages came up in front of Yi and Wu. Hermes bursts out laughing and smacks his knees at your statement. Athena looks at you with warm eyes. Snorts. Poseidon is greatly angered at your arrogant statement. Many gods agree with Poseidon. Poseidon shows a strong enmity towards you. Aegirus grins evilly. Aegirus has strengthened the power he gave you, Hyongshinaxel. You are able to do more with the power from now on. The skill, demonism, is combined with the power, Hyongshinaxel. Aegirus turns back and shouts loudly at the other demons. The other demons intentionally ignore Aegirus. Most demonic societies are looking at you with serious eyes. When he caught the Summer Queen, the gods and demons didn't react, but the moment he spoke about godly murder, fierce responses came out. Gods were great beings. Obviously, their reputation and honor were the most important. That was the base of what maintained belief in them, and it was the foundation of their holy position. Talking about murdering a god in front of them was like kicking their reputation and honor to the ground. Even those who weren't related to Yi and Wu would feel uncomfortable. Poseidon, who hadn't looked kindly upon Yi and Wu for a long time, was now completely revealing his enmity. Because he had bound Brahm as his subordinate, the reaction was even louder. Open hollow corner bracket, crazy bastard. Viera scoffed at him because she knew this fact well, but her eyes were smiling. She was clearly laughing at him in ridicule. She looked at him as if telling him to give everything he had. Open hollow corner bracket, sure. Having foolish thoughts is also a freedom that only mortals can have. Do whatever you want, I'll stay here. Chech. Viera disappeared in the fog again. Her presence vanished like a lie. A god. Someone fell to a soul, but someone transcended. Interesting. Haha. Brahm unwittingly laughed after watching Yi and Wu and Viera conversation. Then, he looked at Yi and Wu with cold eyes. Look here, master. Yes, you said this before, right? You'd help me return to my original spot someday. His original spot, the godly throne, the promise to return him to Brahma. You better keep that promise. Mother Earth, I have to kill her myself. Brahm felt displeased because his Viera was still fine after having made his daughter into that state. No, he was even more dissatisfied at the fact that she had climbed higher. And so that was why he brought it up, but you can't. Yi and Wu shook his head. Brahm furrowed his eyebrows. What? I'll be the one to rip her apart. I can't give that up. As Yi and Wu replied with a serious face, Brahm sighed subconsciously. What should we do? I can't give that up either. Then let's make a bet on who'll do it in the end. Sounds good. Multiple godly societies are looking at you with dissatisfaction. Brahm snorted, seeing the messages. So what if they were dissatisfied? For all their amazing powers and their level, they couldn't even move from the 98th floor. They couldn't do anything to them. Also, Brahm strongly believed that he could do it. If he was with Yi and Wu, nothing was impossible. The future he drew in his head. It was almost gone after his holiness was taken, but in the prophecies that he could barely see with the small amount of holy power he had, everyone was laughing happily, like a family picture. Himself, Galliard, Sesha, and Ananta. And between them was Yi and Wu, with a smile so tender he almost looked like Jung Woo. Chapter 251 Growth 1. Time flowed like the wind. It could be called the most confusing times since the tower was created. Everyone was so out of it that they asked, "It's already been that long?" The events were rough enough to be felt by the normal players on the lower floors, and even those who had retired. With the Summer Queen's collapse, the existence of the Red Dragon was in danger. Countless hunters threatened them, the Blood Land ripped them apart the most voraciously, and the Devil Army began to hunt the 81 Eyes. The Elohim allied themselves with the Sea of Time and attempted to invade the 76th floor. Other than that, other large and small clans invaded the Red Dragon's territories spread throughout the tower, and the Red Dragon was in extreme danger. However, the Red Dragon was still the Red Dragon. Even though the Summer Queen was gone, they had a strong and firm history. Baihi Waltz stood out the most, having taken over the Red Dragon. After revealing herself in the war with the One-Horned Tribe, she also contributed a lot in other places. She was skilled at both Mugong and magic, and on the battlefield, she always left victorious. She was lacking compared to the Summer Queen, but she definitely didn't fall short of the 9 Kings. And after the Red Dragon ended a battle in stalemate on the 76th floor against 3 other groups, they weren't a toothless tiger but a beast with sharp claws. Thanks to this, although the Red Dragon had suffered a lot of damage, they were able to remain as the ever-strongest clan. However, the real problem followed. Just when Baihi Waltz was breathing out a sigh of relief having defended the 76th floor well, the other 9 dragon sons attacked her. Waltz had one-sidedly lost, tired from all the fighting, and she was barely able to escape with a few of her followers. The 9 dragon sons clashed again for the empty throne. It was a rebellion, each of them only thought of being king. The 81 Eyes and other martial squads were split, following different masters, and comrades who had been fighting side by side not too long ago stabbed each other in the chest. And when another day passed, the Red Dragon was split into 3. The White Dragon of Waltz, who was nicknamed Spring Queen. The Black Dragon of Tom, the Autumn Lord, who had been the youngest but suddenly grew after swallowing his brothers. The weakest 3, Hyel, Liso, and Baradan, made up the Green Dragon. The 76th floor that had just settled down was split into 3, and they entered a war of eating each other up. As if to match this, the other large clans attempted changes of their own. This whirlwind of confusion couldn't even be compared to when the Cheongwado fell, swallowed up the players and medium clans. New clans appeared from swallowing each other up, and some were even enough to threaten the 8 large clans. Tens of new players became rankers every day. Now, in the world of the tower, the sword was the law. Upheaval. If everything could be explained with one word, that was it. Although most of the tower was in confusion, it wasn't like that everywhere. The One-Horned Tribe continued to live their daily lives, outside of the range of the whirlwind. With the sudden disappearance of the bow god, things became quiet again. It was also the same with Yi and Wu's party. Yi and Wu and Brahm created an antidote for Ananta based on what Viera Dune's shedding had said. All this time, the Walpurgisnacht had put too many different drugs inside Ananta to provide a vessel, so a considerably long time was required. And after a few months, Brahm finished the antidote. Seeing his daughter's quivering eyelashes, Brahm had all kinds of thoughts. What should he say when she opens her eyes? Should he tell her that she'll be all right? Or should he silently stroke her head? Wouldn't it be best to show her how healthily Sesha had grown up? No, what if she still hated him? But all these thoughts vanished when Ananta opened her eyes. Ananta. Brahm gripped Ananta's hand. She looked so pitiful lying there, barely breathing through the mask. He felt like crying. During times like this, he hated that his body was a homunculus. He wanted to cry and share his warmth, but he couldn't. However, Ananta's eyes didn't focus on anything. Her eyes just emptily looked forward. Her consciousness was definitely back. Concern flashed through Brahm's eyes. Yi and Wu, who was behind him, stiffened. Brahm's concern became a reality. After pulling Ananta out from the capsule, Brahm focused on healing Ananta. Thankfully, she made progress, enough to be noticeable in weeks. However, Ananta still wasn't able to wake up completely. She could eat with someone's help and even walk. But that was it. She just blankly sat still the entire day. She couldn't speak or recognize people, not even Sesha. No one knew why. Everyone just guessed that it was from the trauma. Even with mental therapy, she didn't improve. Because of that, Brahm painfully spent his days next to Ananta. He wondered if this was karma from the heavens. It was a punishment for not taking care of his daughter because of his greed. But if they wanted to punish him, they should have hurt him, not his daughter. He continued feeling like it was his fault, so he was pained. Seeing him, Yi and Wu also felt empty. If only I knew a bit earlier. Yi and Wu's fingers flinched. If this was Earth, he would have smoked a cigarette. He had never been so desperate for a cigarette since he entered the tower. That was how frustrated he was. For the first time, Yi and Wu received a bottle of alcohol from the head elder. Clang! The bottle and his flask clinked against each other. The alcohol tasted bitter. He was about to pour back the second glass, but a hand suddenly popped out to stop him. He lifted his head. Fant and Adora were pouting. What are you doing pathetically by yourself? You have to drink with other people. Fant took the flask from Yi and Wu and drank it himself, sitting opposite of Yi and Wu. Adora silently filled Yi and Wu's glass. Yi and Wu just watched the alcohol being poured. He could see he was wearing a mask in his reflection, but he could feel that he was smiling bitterly inside of it. Even he could see it, so there was no way Fant and Adora wouldn't see it. However, the two didn't ask Yi and Wu for the reason. They just silently sat next to him. They raised their glasses and drank together. Yi and Wu was able to slowly clear his messy mind. Even after entering the tower, he didn't know of Sesha's existence. He also didn't know what kind of things Brahm and Ananta had suffered through. He didn't even want to imagine what kind of things Viera did. Open corner bracket. How would you know that? It's not like you have the thousand-lee eyes like Alpharon or can predict the future like the three Norns. Open corner bracket. That's right. Don't take it to heart. Shannon and Hanryong tried to cheer Yi and Wu up, but Yi and Wu couldn't toss his thoughts away. If only he had been a bit faster. If only he had rushed a little to save Ananta. To stop Viera. Then, he wouldn't have to show Sesha her sick mother. His despair and regret turned to other thoughts. If I was stronger, this was all because he was weak. If he was just a little stronger, he wouldn't have had to spend more time on the lower floors. He would have been able to save Sesha and Ananta faster. Of course, he had had these thoughts in the past too. If only he was stronger, he could finish his revenge. And he could destroy the tower like he wanted to. However, this time, the reason was a bit different. I have to become a roof. Unlike in the beginning, when he was by himself, his surroundings were filled with his people. Brahm, Ananta, Sesha. His faithful servants, Shannon, Hanryong, Rebecca, and Boo. Fant and Adora and Galliard. The Martial King was now his special teacher, and the One-Horn tribe was his family. Revenge was revenge, but now, he had to protect the people around him. A fence, or a roof. He wanted to become that kind of being. That was the Martial King. Even while fighting the Summer Queen, he was strong enough to protect the tribe. The other tribe members had supported him so he could focus on the fight. They believed in each other, and they gave each other their backs. Looking at that scene, Yi and Wu had a thought. He wanted to be like that too. He wanted to become a fence to protect those around him, and they would protect his back in return. He dreamed of such a scene. On one side, he was worried that he would end up like his brother in Arthea, but like what his brother said in his diary, he didn't want to be an embarrassing brother. Also, he wanted to prove that his brother was right for believing in his friends and lover. He wanted to protect himself and his people. This thought was strongly stamped in his head. Yi and Wu confessed his thoughts to everyone. Open corner bracket. Why are you suddenly being so clingy? My toes are curling up. Open corner bracket. We are bound to you. Please walk the path you want to. Even though Shannon's talking like that, that's not how he really feels. We'll always silently be by your side. Shannon and Hanryong replied like themselves. Ahem, I was wondering what you were doing in the middle of the night. So that's what it was. Goodness. Oriboni, do you remember what I said last time? I want to share your burden. Fant shook his head like he didn't know why Yi and Wu had been so concerned about that, and Adora carefully looked into Yi and Wu's eyes. Looking into her sparkling eyes, Yi and Wu remembered a voice. I wanted to see what kind of burden you were carrying. Would it be wrong if I wanted to share that with you? The day that he had collapsed after the fight with Agaras on the 23rd floor, Adora had pulled Yi and Wu close and told him that if he really considered them his little siblings, he should share his burden. Yi and Wu said that he would tell them someday. And now, the day had come. Chapter 252 Growth 2. Yi and Wu took his mask off in front of them without any preamble. It might have been from the influence of the alcohol, but he didn't have any regrets. This was the first time he showed them his face of his own volition. Adora smiled with a nod, and Fant looked at Yi and Wu with surprised eyes. Heaven Wing. Yi and Wu began to tell them his story. Thinking of what happened that day, his emotions raged inside of him, but he didn't show it. He spoke like it was someone else's story. Fant was the one to break the calm. He pumped his chest with his fist like he was furious, and he even slammed his glass down. Adora's eyes shook hearing the story, which was more serious than she thought, but she shut her mouth and didn't say anything. And father? Does father know this? Yi and Wu shook his head. I never told him. He's only interested in his own business. Does it make sense that he doesn't know his disciple went through something like this? Fan shot up from his seat. This won't do. What are you gonna do? Why are you asking me that? You're now a member of our tribe. Your business is the tribe's business. You went through such horrible things, so does it make sense that the tribe leader is sitting his butt down sipping tea? He looked like he was going to dash out. Before Yi and Wu could stop him, Adora shouted. Sit down, you bastard. What, bastard? Adora, who had been trying to act demure in front of Yi and Wu, wasn't able to control her emotions this time. Fant was shocked. But Adora continued to shout with squinted eyes. Yeah, bastard. Do you really think father doesn't know about this? Fant closed his mouth. The martial king focused on the village, pretending like he didn't care about the ongoings of the world, but his eyes and ears were always open. He resembled his father, but Fant couldn't deny that his father was sly. Also, their mother, the psychic medium, was always next to him. You still don't know. Father is giving Oroboni a chance so he can fly using his own wings. He's protecting him from his natural enemies. Fant suddenly felt sober. He just plopped down and tipped his glass back down again. His sister was always logical. He didn't know why he was so fiery all the time. Father knows that Oroboni will leave the nest one day. He also wants to see Oroboni finish things on his own. Fant nodded his head. The Yi and Wu he had seen so far definitely wasn't someone to stay inside the tribe. Suddenly, Fant became curious why someone who hadn't said anything all this time was suddenly telling them everything. Fant stared at Yi and Wu like he was going to eat him up. He didn't ask anything, but he looked at Yi and Wu with fierce eyes, as if compelling him to tell them the truth. Yi and Wu knew what the question in Fante's eyes was. He tipped back the alcohol. He could feel something hot moving down his throat. It had a high alcohol content, but strangely, he felt wide awake. Talk. Yi and Wu spoke the truth that he had been pushing down all this time. Want you to become my wings. Wings? Fant looked blankly at Yi and Wu. However, Yi and Wu could see the expectation that was burning in Fante's eyes because Fant liked cheesy things. Yi and Wu clenched his fists and continued. Yeah, wings. Like I said, what I'm going to be doing in the future is useless. It's fighting with the tower itself. That's why it's hard for me to tell you guys to help me. Also, your tribe. Fant picked his ear like he was bored and cut Yi and Wu off. What? Phew. The substance on Fante's finger flew off as he blew it with a smile. In times like this, all you have to say is one thing. Help. And here I was, wondering why you looked so serious. You were always so curt and made people feel frustrated. I see you're also someone with a lot of words, huh? He. Fant chuckled, shoulders shaking up and down. Adora nodded as she looked at Yi and Wu. Yi and Wu heard her voice echoing in his head again. I want to share your burden. Yi and Wu silently closed his eyes. He only had one thing to say to the two. Thanks. It was something he had felt for a long time, but the best thing he had done since entering the tower was meeting the two. Fant scratched his nose that was either red from embarrassment or the alcohol. He gulped down the rest of his glass. You don't have to worry about anything else. Father will take care of the tribe even if he doesn't have us, and who cares if someone else takes over the successor's spot? I can just give it to them. It was such a Fant-like thing to say. Fant grinned mischievously. Also, if you're born a man, you should have the courage to fight with the world. Kya, it's awesome when I say it. But I'm a girl, Adora said jokingly. Why are you a girl? Do you want to die? Your precious Oroboni is watching. I'll talk to you later. Ha, I'll talk to you now, little sister. Fant burst out laughing, not caring if Adora glared at him. Adora ground her teeth and promised herself that she would punish him when the influence of alcohol was gone. She looked back at Yi and Wu with a calm face. But Oroboni, what are you planning on doing from now? Didn't you bring this up because you have something to say? Yi and Wu nodded his head. I have plans to make a clan. Their eyes widened. Clan, I see you're trying to establish an organization first. Since that's the most important part. We'll only get somewhere after we have a foundation. And we're the founding members. Fant laughed with amusement. But we only have a small number of members, and it'll be hard to create one right away since we're not prepared. What should we do about that? Vansh shut his lips. Become strong enough until we can't be crushed, regardless of who pushes you down. You're telling us to become stronger so we're not an embarrassment to you. That's a bit hurtful to my pride. Vansh shot up from where he was sitting. His eyes shined like they were on fire. It's a good thing, actually. I hate being a burden. You told me to become your wings, right? I'll become your teeth, not your wings, so you should work hard too. You might be swallowed up by me. They were done drinking. Vansh spun around and left. Adora bowed to Yi and Wu and followed after Vansh. Sitting there alone, Yi and Wu drank the last of what was left in his glass. Talk. The sound of his glass clicking on the table felt loud. Chapter 253 Growth 3. After that day, the party was busy, like the rest of the tower. Boo focused on making the dungeon, and Brahm was busy healing Ananta and restoring the outer space. Shannon and Hanryong gave their all on understanding the Monkey King's inheritance and Rebecca on recovering her holy power. Everyone agreed with what Yi and Wu said, and they realized many things from the war with the Red Dragon. We're still weak. They had all contributed a lot in the war. However, they had only taken advantage of the confusing situation. There was almost nothing they did with their own strength. They realized that the world they knew was small. Hanryong, who had been the saber god, found that his peak wasn't worth anything after watching the Martial King's battle. Also, through this war, Yi and Wu had clearly revealed himself to the world. Now, he wasn't a rookie to look forward to but someone to be wary of. Because of that, it was hard to make plans like they had until now. A lot of people would be watching and bothering them. To protect Yi and Wu from those dangers, they had to become stronger first. Everyone focused on their individual training. No one said anything about climbing the tower. One could climb the tower anytime, but having the time to train was rare. Yi and Wu also focused on his training. He looked over his skills and powers again, and worked hard to completely master the third step awakening. His desire for the sword became greater. On the 20th floor, he had continued to train after learning aura, but unlike magic, he didn't make that much progress with the sword. Shannon and Hanryong gave him advice for this. Open corner bracket. Most people think that they arrive at the end of martial arts once they can create aura. That's a ridiculous thought. Open corner bracket. Aura isn't the destination. It's the beginning, because that's when you learn what the meaning of the sword is. If you're proud of merely knowing the meaning, you won't grow. The two had walked different paths, but what they were saying was the same. This was only the beginning. They said that expanding his knowledge of the sword and engraving it into his body was the most important. Then what should I do to know its meaning? Open corner bracket. Extend your consciousness onto the sword. Open corner bracket. It's not just focusing on your sword, you have to become one with it. Then, you'll be able to complete the body that you want. Yi and Wu understood the gist of what that meant. Becoming one with the sword. The one-horned tribe called it the body and sword is one. The public said that the peak of the sword was becoming an expert. From then, Yi and Wu began to train his sword again. Wrong. Vigrid always shook like it was glad to see him. Every day, Yi and Wu did his best to focus his consciousness on the blade. A few months flashed by like that. Time difference. Extrasensory perception. In the slower world, Yi and Wu swung his sword again for the millionth time. This was the world of his consciousness, where time ran 10 times slower than the rest of the world, so he was now familiar with the movement. All of his consciousness was absorbed into his sword. Aura occasionally sparked and was bound to his consciousness. Strong energy. Aura had various forms, but they were all called aura blades. You were already a master being able to use aura, so sword users only focused on refining their aura and didn't think beyond that. However, the one-horned tribe split this into 3 different categories. Sword energy, strong energy, and formless strong energy. Formless strong energy was also called consciousness strong energy, and it was still too far for Yi and Wu to reach. However, strong energy was different. After Yi and Wu's thorough efforts, he was able to use sword energy easily. He was working on moving on to the next step. The power of concentrating your magic circle and fixing it with your consciousness, strong energy. Yi and Wu wanted to accomplish this and chased again and again after someone in the world of his consciousness. The Palguayan martial extremes. The power that the Martial King had used against the Summer Queen. Yi and Wu had thought of it so many times that he could clearly replicate the fight with his eyes closed. The King of Martial Arts. The man truly deserving the honorable name. If Yin Wu could touch the martial king's feet, he would be able to escape the limits of where he was. Pooing, the strong energy that gathered at his blade lost its form, and time sped up again. Yin Wu let go of his sword from the pain of being flicked out into the world and was pushed back from where he was standing. It's still not working, he clicked his tongue seeing his bloodied right hand. Dragon's blood circulated to quickly close his wound. It was his regeneration skill. The past few months had been torture to Yin Wu. On the 5 mountains of penances, he had also worked this much, but there, he was limited by the penances so he was able to grow quickly. This time, he couldn't. He had to test the limits of his body and focus on mastering it, so it was an endless cycle of boredom. There was only one movement. Striking his sword down, although he was putting his consciousness on it, repeating the same movement thousands of times made him feel like he was going to go crazy. Of course, Yin Wu didn't just train his sword. In fact, Yin Wu learned a lot during all this time. The demonic dragon body with the dragon's blessing and the demon's blessing. The philosopher's stone in his cores. The 3rd step awakening he had forced open on the 21st floor. His body quickly grew, but his consciousness couldn't catch up. He didn't know where his limits were and what his potential was. That was why he used time difference and pushed himself to the extremes. At first, it had been effective. Occasionally, he would awake his powers and break through his limits. He did it because he trusted in the ability of the regeneration skill. He was able to gain the most from the bloodline magic that Brahm advised him about. Of course, he only learned the basics and used it with his rune magic. He didn't even think of touching the harder ones, leaving it to Bu. Even with just that, Yin Wu had changed noticeably. But for some time, he had been blocked by a large wall. His magic growth paused, and his body didn't change. The only thing he had left was the sword. He had arrived at his last limit. The problem was after this. He no longer grew. It would have been nice if he made a little progress, but there wasn't anything like that. The wall was too high. He had swung his sword against it again and again, but he failed every time. Everything was useless. Yin Wu wasn't strong enough to aim for the Palgui or the martial extremes. However, he was at the beginning. He could begin to learn it, and this was done using strong energy. But he failed too. He had enough magic power, his body was enough, and his level was enough. He definitely put enough of his consciousness on it too. However, he was missing one thing. He just didn't know what it was. He went to the martial king for advice, but he only received an unclear answer. It's because it's not your path. Yin Wu didn't understand what that meant. What do you mean, sir? Figure it out on your own. The martial king didn't give him an answer and just smirked. Yin Wu sighed. It wasn't just this time he felt the martial king's teachings were like this. Whenever he asked a question, the martial king just told him a vague answer and told him to figure it out himself. Yin Wu knew he needed to make his own path, but he would have liked it if the martial king was a bit nicer. Although he'd probably never be nice. In fact, since he knew that he would gain more if he heard this kind of answer, he couldn't complain. Looking back at it now, the martial king's answers were always to the point. He's probably not saying I'm unfit for the sword. He wouldn't have tried to teach me the yin sword if so. Then what is it? Is he saying strong energy doesn't fit me? That's probably not it either. Palgui, the martial extremes. Or am I just doing it wrong? Yin Wu just felt frustrated. He had used all kinds of hidden pieces to get where he was and forced time difference to improve himself. There were only a few obstacles when he learned aura. He had struggled this hard. That was why the wall was even scarier to Yin Wu. He didn't know what he should do from now. It wasn't like he could absorb additional dragon's blessings or demon's blessings. His body was at the right balance for the 3rd step awakening. If this balance was broken, his body could be destroyed. He also wanted to seek advice from Shannon and Hanryong, but they had been silent for a while. They were also focused on their individual training deep inside his shadow. Open corner bracket dot close corner bracket. Open corner bracket dot close corner bracket. Yin Wu wasn't able to find the answer. The time came for him to sit down blankly and organize his thoughts. He felt extremely dejected. He coincidentally met Galliard, who was holding a basket that was filled to the brim, while going to the forest. What are you doing here? You look so depressed. What are you doing here? What's that in your hand? Yin Wu's words faded away. He realized that he had only spoken to Brahm and Sesha after entering the village. He hadn't spoken with Galliard recently. He didn't know what he was up to these days, and the same probably went for Galliard. Yian-Wu quickly answered with a smile so Galliard didn't feel upset. I wasn't making any progress with my training. I was in the middle of figuring things out. Oh, this. Actually, these days, Sesha has been really picky. I was researching how to make vegetables tasty. Galliard grinned looking at the fruits and vegetables in his basket. There probably wasn't anyone who was more attentive to Sesha than Galliard. Brahm was busy with Ananta, and Yian-Wu focused on his training. These days, the time he spent with Sesha had decreased. On the other hand, Galliard was busy taking care of Sesha's diet and all kinds of other things. The daughter he had before he came to this world was about that age, so Galliard was attentive to Sesha. His greatest interest was Sesha's pickiness for food. Galliard was an elf from birth, so he only ate vegetables, and Brahm didn't eat meat frequently. On the other hand, Sesha couldn't get enough of it. Of course the adult menu wouldn't taste good for her. Try mixing bean meat inside the meat. Last time I snuck it in there and she liked it. Bean meat. What's that? Grinding beans to make it look like meat. It tastes like meat, and with some sauce on it, the smell of the beans isn't noticeable. Oh, I can do that. Can you teach me how to make bean meat? Yian-Wu needed some rest from his thinking so he nodded. It wasn't that hard to make anyway. He followed Galliard into Brahm's house, and Sesha ran over to him. Uncly. Ah, our cute little puppy. Were you reading? Yian-Wu lifted Sesha. In Sesha's right hand, there was a book that was the size of her head. Less than qualities of bloodlines that are split by rune magic greater than was the title of the book. It was a book they had stolen from the Summer Queen. Yeah, I'm reading it well. I'm a good girl, but, uncle. Yes, hee. Are you here to play with me today? Yian-Wu smiled bitterly looking at Sesha, whose eyes sparkled. It seemed he had been too indifferent these days. His frustration was swept away when he saw his niece so happy to see him. She had missed Ananta so much, but she wasn't able to speak with her. He should have come here more often. Yeah, I came to play with you. Are you going to eat too? Yeah, phew, that's a relief. Sesha put her tiny hand on her chest and breathed out in relief. She was so cute that Yian-Wu laughed. Why, you always make yummy food. The food that Galliard makes me is bad. Galliard gripped his heart with a hurt face. Sesha just smiled, not caring. Yian-Wu stroked Sesha's head. Her tail wagged on the floor. She was as lovable as a puppy. Thanks for the tip, haha. After the meal, Sesha fell asleep. Galliard lightly stroked Sesha's head and chuckled. Sesha didn't know, but 1/3 of the stir-fried pork she ate today was made of beans. She might notice it, so you have to adjust the amount carefully. Got it. It seems like I'll have to use the sauce well too. It was a nice meal, and the texture was good, too. Yian-Wu nodded and pinched Sesha's cheek. Her chubby cheeks rose up and down. She was tightly holding onto Yian-Wu's forefinger as she slept. Yian-Wu's face was all smiles. He always smiled when he looked at Sesha. He pressed Sesha's other cheek with another finger. Sesha slightly groaned and frowned in her sleep. She was such an angel. It's interesting every time I see it. What is? Yian-Wu playfully teased Sesha while she was sleeping and lifted his head at what Galliard said. You seem to have more emotions now. Before, you were just cold. You have these caring sides of you too. Yian-Wu smiled sourly. I think it's because of Sesha. Because of Sesha? Yes. I can't just show a stiff side of myself to her. I suppose so. Our Sesha is pretty cute after all. I heard she's loved by all the boys in the village. Is that so? No uncle would be mad that his niece was popular. No, he did feel a bit anxious actually. What if some fool received Sesha's attention? Yian-Wu crinkled his face thinking of what to do if someone made Sesha suffer. Then, he lightly laughed. Galliard was right. Even when he was in the tutorial, he never had these thoughts. Right now, he only had one wish. It was for Ananta to wake up so she could hug Sesha. He hoped that Sesha's face wouldn't be dark anymore, like the gaze that Galliard and himself were giving her right now. Children at that age should just grow receiving the love of adults. Did you know? You changed a lot too. Me, yes. Galliard smiled bitterly. He didn't deny the fact. In Sesha, he had found happiness that he couldn't find in his old life. His lonely life as a hunter chasing Akasha's snake was over. Out of Fant, Adora, Brahm, Shannon, Hanryong, Rebecca, and Boo, he was the only person who was relaxed. Galliard wanted to say that this was all because of Yian-Wu and Jung-Woo, but he changed the subject because he felt shy. But why were you sitting blankly in the forest? You looked concerned about something. It's nothing. I'm saying this because it doesn't seem to be just nothing. I'm not one to delve into these things, but if you have something bothering you, you can tell me. I may not be able to solve it, but I can be a good listener. Tell me what's on your mind. Yi and Wu smiled bitterly. He hesitated. It wasn't that he was embarrassed, but he didn't know where to start. Everything was on the tip of his tongue. It was only after some time that Yi and Wu began to speak. His growth, hindered by a wall. The aura that disappeared. His evaporating consciousness. He felt a lot better after speaking about his concerns. But Galliard didn't say anything and was deep in thought. Yi and Wu looked at him with surprised eyes, not expecting an answer, and Galliard suddenly burst up. Since Sesh is sleeping, wanna follow me to the backyard? Yi and Wu didn't know what Galliard was thinking, but he nodded his head and left the cottage with Galliard. In the backyard, Galliard plucked a branch from a persimmon tree. It was a thin branch that was as long as his arm. It looked weak, like it would break with just a touch. What was he trying to do? Yi and Wu quietly looked at Galliard, and Galliard swung the branch around and nodded with a satisfied face. Then, he pointed at Yi and Wu with the branch. Attack me. Yi and Wu's eyes widened. What are you? Like I said, attack me. Let's return to when we were in the tutorial. Something that's different is that I'll fight back. But I won't use aura. Of course, you can use it. But just use the basics. What did Galliard want to do? Yi and Wu couldn't read his mind. He got that Galliard wanted to teach him something, but he couldn't guess what he was trying to do with the branch. This kind of fight didn't make sense. Yi and Wu was already stronger than most rankers. If he used his powers on top of that, he was confident he could fight against high rankers too. On the other hand, Galliard wasn't much different from when he was in the tutorial. He was at the level of a ranker. There was no way he could fight against Yi and Wu without using aura. However, Galliard just waved the branch at Yi and Wu to provoke him. Galliard was normally a quiet and calm person, so it seemed like he was trying to teach Yi and Wu something right now. Yi and Wu pulled out his magic bayonet. As he took a step forward, he aimed at Galliard's left stomach. It was an effect of the 8 extreme fists, moving the sword forward to change it into any direction necessary depending on the defense of his opponent. However, he was just about to counter the branch that was striking down on the magic bayonet, but the branch suddenly wrapped around the magic bayonet like rubber and swept across Yi and Wu's lower body. Pock! Yi and Wu fell forward from the intense pain. He felt numb. It had happened so fast that he didn't know what happened. What was the thing that twisted space, and how did the branch stretch out to hit him? There definitely wasn't any magic power in it, but his right leg throbbed. More than anything, what shocked Yi and Wu the most was, how is that possible? He had definitely followed it with his draconic eyes and extrasensory perception, but the speed of the branch was incomprehensible. It wasn't possible. It was like the branch wasn't a branch. While he was making all kinds of guesses, Galliard rested the branch on his shoulder and smiled faintly. Do you wanna go again? Chapter 254 Growth 4. Yi and Wu nodded and slowly stood up. Then, he got into position again, eyes narrowed. He didn't know what just happened with the attack. It was definitely a branch. But it also wasn't. It felt like it had turned into something completely different for a moment. Draconic eyes. Yi and Wu opened his eyes wide, thinking that another mysterious attack was about to come flying at him. Flaws twisted in the air like spiderwebs. After he had received more of the dragon's blessing, he was able to see more flaws. Walk. The branch moved through the flaws. It was slow, like before. It was just a normal tree branch. Yi and Wu didn't take his eyes off of the branch and kicked off from the ground. He wanted to avoid it and then face it head-on. Reading the change of the branch was his goal. Just when he was about to strike Galliard, the branch stiffened and attempted to go for his side. It was the same change as before. No, actually, just considering the change, it was different. It had been as hard as a club before, and now, it was as quick as lightning. Yi and Wu twisted his body midair, barely avoiding the attack. Or he thought he avoided it. This time, the end of the branch shined and pierced his side. Pung! It was such a sudden shift. Even though he had been chasing it after his draconic eyes, he couldn't tell what had happened. Before Yi and Wu could bring his magic bayonet down, he was blown away by the impact to his stomach. Yi and Wu floated in the air and rolled to the ground. Kook, kook, phlegm was stuck in his throat. He almost threw up. How is it? All. Do it again. Yin Wu forced himself up. He had taken a hit again, but he saw something he hadn't seen before. Wouldn't he be able to avoid it this time? He wanted to see the magic of the branch. Galliard smiled faintly. Yin Wu's eyes were burning up. His dejected state of mind had disappeared. It won't be different this time. It will be. If you insist on doing it until you understand, I have no reason to stop you. Galliard flicked the branch at Yin Wu and provoked him. Yin Wu moved with a different strategy this time. The result was the same. Pock. Single quote. How? Yin Wu continued to attack using different methods. He threatened Galliard with the 8 writings of divinations of the 8 extreme swords. However, Yin Wu landed on the ground with a pock or a pook sound every time. His entire body was covered with grime. Just what happened? Yin Wu looked blankly at Galliard. He didn't get a single counterattack in while attacking him. It wasn't a technical problem. Yin Wu was definitely above Galliard in terms of skill. He was frustrated by the strange magic that continued to make him fall. He was able to see something, but that was it. He couldn't read more than that. Galliard didn't use any magic power or skills. The draconic eyes confirmed that Galliard didn't break his word. In the end, Yin Wu sighed. It was a sign of surrender. If Shannon or Hanryong was around, he would ask for advice, but they were silent like always. Just how is this possible? Galliard smiled, not a single fleck of dirt on him. Consciousness. Consciousness. Yin Wu was baffled. He knew about consciousness as well. He had even gained a numbering skill called extrasensory perception through it on the 5 mountains of penances. TN. Consciousness changed to consciousness for accuracy to show that it's not the normal consciousness that we think of in English. However, he didn't see Galliard use his consciousness. You said you focused on pushing your body to the limit, right? Yes, sir. That might be a good way to train. Considering the traits of a dragon body, the limits will be very high. It's definitely not easy to train yourself up to that point. Yin Wu nodded his head. The wall that he crashed into this time was high, but the training he had done until now wasn't easy either. Pushing your body to the extreme made one as worn out as a used rag. But the problem comes after that. After that. It's about how you use that power. Yin Wu shook his head in disagreement. I'm not trying to brag, but I don't think I lack anything in terms of ability. His ability continued to improve as he grew. Yin Wu already mastered the 8 writings of divination and was also training his magic to the extreme as well. I think you're mistaken about something. What I'm talking about is different from ability. Quote. How should I explain this? Galliard stroked his chin and organized his thoughts. Imagination. You lack imagination. Quote. What kind of nonsense was this? Galliard laughed like he realized what he said didn't make sense and tried again. I'll show you slowly. It looked like he was just playing with the branch. Then, the space around Galliard began to shift. Yin Wu's eyes widened. The change was so sudden that if Galliard didn't show him slowly, he would have missed it. He's demonstrating his consciousness with his body. The reason why Yin Wu hadn't been able to see the consciousness was because Galliard wasn't letting it out, but rather circulating it inside himself. Yin Wu had only thought of releasing his consciousness. The consciousness was something to enlarge just his mind. He only considered it a tool to make his sword sharper and firmer and to read the surroundings of an opponent that was far away. Something similar to extrasensory perception and aura. He had never thought of circulating it within his body. If he didn't pull it out, he didn't need to use it. The world of his mind would always stay inside of him even without effort. However, Galliard had flipped his way of thinking around. Galliard enlarged his mind and synchronized his mind with his physical body. He had pushed his consciousness into the deepest parts of his body. With this, the 2 bodies were completely under his control, and he could cause changes as he imagined them. Shik. Galliard slowly moved forward, swinging the branch. When he sped up, the branch was twisting the space around it. As he did, Galliard's body slightly changed. Yin Wu saw the changes in Galliard's muscles, the manipulation of consciousness, and the movement of strength. Each squirmed as they connected to each other. And within that, there were many different things. Galliard was something different every moment. He became a strong storm or fast like lightning. He became a firm rock or bent softly like a palm tree. Yin Wu realized his mistake then. He had only focused on how the branch changed when he should have read the change in Galliard. The branch only changed as an extension of Galliard. Consciousness, and its change. Countless consciousnesses combined to become Galliard. Yi and Wu felt like he knew what the imagination that Galliard had talked about was. Becoming storm and lightning, that was probably what he meant. The space around him changed, influenced by the consciousness. Talk. Galliard brought the branch down and sighed. Phew, my entire body aches after using it for the first time in a while. Crack, crack, Galliard stretched out his muscles and turned to Yi and Wu. Did you see something? I've never heard of moving your body with consciousness. Since most people release it or put it inside their weapons. Right. Yes, sir, they think of consciousness as a tool or weapon. But it's not. Galliard put emphasis on his words. Consciousness is a lubricant. Yi and Wu's eyes slightly became bigger. Consciousness is a supplement to make your existence stronger. A supplement of spreading your senses beyond yourself. A supplement to make your sword sturdier and sharper. A supplement to use the power of your physical body properly. Ah, Yi and Wu thought of what Galliard said in the beginning. How he was going to use his power. Yi and Wu was already powerful after training his body to the extreme. He also had skills to back up his physical prowess. However, he had never thought of how he was going to use it. Even if it was the same strength, it was vastly different depending on how it was used. Consciousness allowed him to control how it was used and made the process smoother. Using your body properly means that you're properly controlling your power. However, most people get this confused. They think that they can use their strength properly. But they're wrong. Galliard shook his head. You must be able to use your consciousness freely. You have to be able to use your body like a sword. Can you do that? Yi and Wu closed his mouth and thought. How had he fought until now? It was power. He only wanted more power. That was also why he forced himself to train. Power. This was the ultimate destructive force to Yi and Wu. The 8 extreme swords, wave of fire, and dragon killers. They were all to raise his destructive power. But that wasn't it. Galliard was telling him not to focus solely on power. Power was just power. He shouldn't be moved by it but move it himself instead. He had to control it. Consciousness was the most important thing for that. Yi and Wu felt the world that he had been living in crumbling. It was like there was a hole in it. It was just a small one, but there was a hole in the wall. It was so small that it wasn't even noticeable, but he could barely see what was behind it. The wall I was feeling wasn't a limit but the world that I trapped myself in. Why didn't I think that I misunderstood what I had gained until now? He felt his frustration slowly fading away. However, he felt like it wasn't going to be easy, and he didn't know where to start. Consciousness. He needed to research how to use consciousness and how this was supposed to be applied to his body. He was grateful. Now that he knew the path, he only had to find it. Even though the hole in the wall was small, it could become a crack that would bring the whole thing down. Yi and Wu bowed to Galliard. There was something Zheng Wu said about you. Galliard's eyes were filled with curiosity. He wanted to know what the person he missed said about him. He said that you were his first teacher. Galliard rubbed his face with an awkward face. His nose was a bit red. He had repeatedly told Zheng Wu not to say things like that, but it seemed like he had still been saying cringy things like that. Now I know why he said that. Don't say useless things. Galliard shook his hand in embarrassment. From now on, using your consciousness actively is the most important part. I suppose it'll just sound like nonsense if I tell you to use it, Yes, sir, you have to think of controlling your body, not your consciousness. As I said, consciousness is only a lubricant, so if you're on the right path, it'll come with it. Controlling my body. Yi and Wu repeated the same words over and over again. Also, there's probably no better way to control your body than Bashingkyung. Yi and Wu's eyes shined. Bashingkyung. It was an acronym for Babup, Shinbup, and Kyunggong. Bubup was the method of rolling your feet, Shinbup was moving your body, and Kyunggong was making your body lighter. Moving your body. This is the foundation of all martial arts. That's why this is the very basic method of controlling your body. Something important to using Bashingkyung is Shunpo. Galliard nodded his head. Yi and Wu's eyes flashed. He felt like he had snuck a look at the secret of Shunpo, the skill that could unlock Alpharon's third skill. The path was finally opened. Chapter 255 Growth 5. Galliard glanced at the sky. The sun had set, and the moon was rising. A yellow light flashed in his eyes and disappeared. The night was home to dark elves. Others might think it was cold, but to them, it was like being in your mother's warm hug. Galliard felt himself becoming more powerful. The moon was brighter than normal, so it was the perfect moment to show something. Actually, even if it was dark, they wouldn't be hindered, but Galliard felt like the moon was also cheering Yi and Wu on. You said Jungwoo told you I was his first teacher, right? Yes, sir. And the second is probably Brahm. Then who's the third? Yi and Wu just faintly smiled. Galliard PSHED. I see. He's not someone you can easily talk about. Galliard shook his head and looked at Yi and Wu. You know, that was hard for me. And it was scary as well. Being someone's teacher. It's like what the Martial King is to you. To Jungwoo, you were someone like that. That's why it was hard. But he still thought of me like that, gosh. Galliard looked like he was reminiscing about the old days. In there, Cha Jungwoo was laughing. He was always playful and bright. That face overlapped with Yi and Wu. Their expressions and impressions were different, but they felt the same. Since it already turned out like this, since I'm already a teacher, how about I do what I did for your younger brother? Sounds good. I'll leave it to you. Yi and Wu bowed. Galliard nodded and stepped back. He had a relaxed attitude like he had come from a walk. But the aura that came from him couldn't be compared to before. Why? Yi and Wu's thoughts about Galliard instantly changed. He thought that there wasn't anything that different about him since the tutorial, but that wasn't it. Galliard was different. It wasn't that his physical abilities were different. The energy concentration, the concentration of magic power and the threatening atmosphere he gave off were different. It meant that he had gained some newfound powers during this time. Just what made him change this much? Galliard spoke to Yi and Wu with deep eyes. Since you mastered Shunpo to some extent, you should know the basics. But there are things that a lot of people have mistaken about Shunpo. Shun, they just think that it means fast. But, Pat, Galliard quickly dashed forward. An intense wind wrapped around Yi and Wu and disappeared. The grass shook and leaves fluttered up. It's not just fast. Wish. Galliard appeared in front of Yi and Wu. Then, he floated up to the sky from the breeze that happened to pass by. He lightly stood on a branch like a feather. It can be light like this. Galliard jumped down from the branch and landed on the ground. Kung. The ground shook around him. It was like someone threw a large rock. Or heavy. Spat. From there, Galliard took a step forward. As he did, other Galliards started to appear. 8 shadows moved around Yi and Wu. Showy. This time, the shadows all disappeared one by one. When the last one disappeared, Galliard's presence couldn't be felt from anywhere. Nothingness Wu, his existence was erased. Yi and Wu whipped his head around looking for Galliard, who couldn't even be found with the draconic eyes. And quiet, only Galliard's voice rang out in the air. Then, tens of lightning bolts landed on top of Yi and Wu's head like an explosion. Yi and Wu jumped back in surprise. Kwang, Galliard reappeared with a grin like he didn't know anything. And loud, Shunpo is a friend with many faces. Yi and Wu blankly nodded his head. He realized that he had been using Shunpo wrong all this time. All this time, Yi and Wu had been focused only on speed. Destructive power and speed, these were prioritized over everything else, and he had benefited from this. But now, he realized how closed his mind had been to think that he could climb higher with just speed. The Shunpo that Galliard used was Galliard himself. It was fast, light, heavy, fancy, quiet, and loud. That was Galliard, his consciousness could be felt from it. And from now on, you'll be facing this friend. It's a friend who changes his mind a lot, so even if it's hard, take good care of it. Yi and Wu heavily nodded his head. Before we meet our friend, we need to get ready. First, before we start, let me ask you this. Which section of your body is most necessary for movement? Isn't it the lower body? Right, the lower body is the center of your body. Galliard nodded his head. The lower body had to be firm for the body to be healthy. Power could only be used when the lower body was sturdy. The lower body was the foundation of all martial arts. Then we should take care of the lower body first, Galliard grinned. For some reason, Yi and Wu felt like he was filled with mischief. First, squat walk around the village 1,000 times. Quote. From that day, Yi and Wu's brutal training began. But everything was ridiculous. Squat walking, leapfrogging, running without rest. They were all things he couldn't see the point of. The one-horned tribe couldn't see what the goal of his training was because they were all things they finished when they were little children. I heard Kane started something again. Yeah, it was some kind of weird jump. He looked like a frog, hee. What's he doing? Beats me. If the snake hunter ordered him to do it, there must be a reason. I wonder what it is. I don't know what it is, but Kane was dying. The tribe members began to guess why Yianwu was training. No one looked down on him. Rather, there were more people who were intensely watching Yianwu's training. Even though they giggled when Yianwu walked by in squats, no one thought it was ridiculous. Galliard was pretty famous within the tribe and everyone acknowledged him. It was more accurate to say that they were interested in him. Even in the tower, dark elves were rare. It was even rarer to find someone with a hunter nickname. The one-horned tribe considered them skilled warriors. Instruction from the hunter would include methods of how he trained himself. The one-horned tribe drooled looking at the training because they went crazy for anything that was related to martial arts. It was a shame they didn't know what it was for. The same went for Fant and Adora. What is that? Adora looked at Yianwu with a blank face. She had taken a break from mastering her yang sword to see how Yianwu was doing, but Yianwu was really jumping around everywhere like a frog. To be exact, Yianwu was jumping to catch a stone that Galliard was tossing in the air. The problem was that the stone was thrown in any which direction, so Yianwu just followed after it. He jumped up into the sky, crash-landed on the ground, and fell in the pond. He was in a horrible state. He was happy after catching the stone, and after he failed, his shoulders would droop. He's cute. Yianwu looked like a puppy to Adora's blind eyes. On the other hand, Fant observed Yianwu with a stiff face. His eyes were hardened. Veins popped out of his clenched fists. Above, pat, Yianwu tossed the stone he had into the ground and flew up into the sky. They were in opposite directions, but he quickly turned his body midair and grabbed the stone before it landed on the ground. He looked like an acrobat. He was extremely careful in catching the stone. Actually, though it looked like a stone, it was actually a cluster of dirt. The cluster of dirt would have fallen apart from the velocity at which it was tossed, but while Yianwu twisted his body in the air, the quality of the dirt turned to one of a light spring breeze. It was consciousness. He was still lacking, but every time he moved, consciousness flowed out of his movements. Actually, it wasn't that hard to use consciousness. The most important thing was to focus. Yianwu had an impressive concentration already, so he was able to get the gist of it. Of course, that didn't mean it was easy. Focusing your consciousness on your sword was actually on the easier side. A sword was firm. It was easy to set your consciousness on something that had a sturdy form. It wouldn't break apart no matter how hard you tossed it around, so it was easy to maintain as well. However, his body was different. Even though he projected his consciousness, his body changed frequently. The pulsing muscles, the movements in between tissue, the blood flowing in the veins, and the involuntary movements of the organs. The body was made up of too many complex things, so it was never in a fixed position. Even if he projected his consciousness on it, it was easy for it to crumble apart. Also, Shunpo had caused more of these changes, so it was impossible to pour his consciousness into every footstep and fist as he moved. He wanted to know how Galliard had done it. He had asked about it, but Galliard just laughed awkwardly and answered like the following. An obsession beyond your consciousness. That'll do the trick. Obsession. It meant that he had to put all his consciousness on his body. It was easier said than done. Galliard pushed Yianwu even harder. He explained that if Yianwu moved his body without rest, there would be a moment when his separated mind and body would match up. Like Galliard intended, Yianwu was able to feel that a unique part of his body was pulsing, albeit only for a moment. No, to be precise, it became familiar to him. In his subconscious, the changes in his body had become normal. Cognizance had occurred. Yianwu exclaimed to himself. Cognizance. Why didn't he think of that before? Cognizance was the very basis of Mugong. It was something that examined the changes in his body so he could move more smoothly. If this continued, he could naturally mediate and experience mental growth as well. That meant it was a way he could examine his body and mind. The important thing was that it fit perfectly with Galliard's explanation on how to control his consciousness with his body. To Yianwu, this was easier than anything else. Extrasensory perception. The way he projected his consciousness to read the change of the world was through cognizance. Yianwu was able to establish his ego on the 20th floor, and he was able to use this against the demonism in the world of his subconscious. It was the internalization of his extrasensory perception. He could observe his body and pour consciousness into where it was needed. He began to control his body. You have learned a new way to use consciousness. Consciousness is a path that holy power travels through. Find new ways to use it after more practice. The stronger your consciousness, the freer your holy level. The proficiency of extrasensory perception, has increased 40.5%. Your understanding of your body has dramatically increased. You have learned about the concept of synchronizing your consciousness and body. Your proficiency of shunpo has dramatically increased 82.9%. After he found a solution, the rest of his training went smoothly. He would still need some time to get used to it, but practice was one of the easiest things for Yi In-woo. Pushing himself to the limits, as he had in Africa, was the secret to Yi In-woo's survival. Time difference. In the slowed-down world, Yi In-woo combined his body and extrasensory perception together to move with consciousness. Here, he would practice endlessly. Talk. Yi In-woo lightly landed on the ground. It was slightly crushed, but the cluster of dirt was still bound together in his hand. Chapter 256 Growth 6. I've still got a long way to go. Yi In-woo mumbled to himself looking at the cluster of dirt in his hand. He had managed to preserve its shape this time, but he wasn't satisfied. If only he could use his consciousness to control his strength. But, now my consciousness follows after me naturally. Yi In-woo grinned, feeling proud and disappointed at the same time. Moving his body for the first time after pushing his lower body to the extreme, he could definitely feel that he was different. It was especially noticeable when he jumped into the air as his consciousness naturally stuck onto him to create many different changes. It was evidence that his body was fundamentally different now. Yi In-woo's muscles had been hard as rocks because he had continuously trained all this time. But now, they were smooth, like rubber. The Philosopher's Stone and the magic circuit provided him with a great amount of magic power. His extrasensory perception was clearer than normal, and Yi In-woo was able to feel the pulse of every cell and muscle. However, Yi In-woo still thought he needed to train more. Even though he had succeeded in internalizing his consciousness, he hadn't synchronized it with his body. He needed to completely control consciousness like he used aura. Looks like you got the basics down now. Just then, Galliard landed next to Yi In-woo with a satisfied smile. Yi In-woo laughed in disbelief. The system was telling him that the proficiency of his skill was 80%, but Galliard was now saying that he was just beginning to take baby steps. It meant he still had a lot to learn. Since you somewhat know how to walk, let's learn to run. Yi In-woo remembered the different movements Galliard had used when he attacked the Elohim on the 23rd floor. They were all different applications of shunpo. His enemies weren't able to fight back when he used each one. Galliard was as sneaky as a ghost. Yi In-woo hadn't been able to see what Galliard was trying to do, so he wasn't able to interfere that much either. What Galliard did at that time was amplify his consciousness. Yi In-woo's eyes flashed. This was the real start of learning how to use consciousness. Even so, he had another thought. If these were the ways of walking, what would flying be? What should I do? Yi In-woo asked eagerly. Simple. It all depends on how well you know the basics, Quote. Galliard lifted a corner of his mouth. Actually trying it out is the best. Pang. Galliard attempted to stab Yi In-woo with the branch in his hand. He had gathered so much consciousness in it that the sound of air condensing and exploding rang out. Yi In-woo instinctively moved back. The branch barely missed his temple. Twisting his body, he pulled out his magic bayonet. Kwang! As the branch and the magic bayonet crossed, something exploded. The two shadows moved back and met in the air again. Kung! Fant was deep in thought. I want you to become my wings. He had been happy when he heard that. Become stronger. And he felt like someone was pressing his chest when he heard that. Become strong enough until we can't be crushed, regardless of who pushes you down. When he heard the last words, Fant cursed. Damn it. It wasn't a curse against Yi In-woo. He was cursing himself. When Yi In-woo first told him to get stronger, Fant confidently said that he would become Yi In-woo's teeth, not his wings. However, he just said this not to have his mind read. This whole time, Fante's thoughts were jumbled. He could feel the gap between Yi In-woo and himself becoming greater as time went on, so he was worried that he might completely fall behind. He continued to train his Mugong, but he didn't get far. He wasn't able to escape from the thought that he was falling behind. He was too weak. On one hand, he didn't know why he couldn't focus on what was making him suffer so much. When he saw Yi In-woo leapfrogging around, Fant had shut his mouth. He realized what the emotion that was making him suffer all this time was. Inferiority. To Fant, Yi In-woo was a role model to respect. At first, he considered him a rival and followed him around to fight him, but Fant began to see his human side and wanted to learn from him. Still, he continued to use his envy of Yi and Wu's abilities as a way to motivate himself. But back then, he had only thought that he would be able to catch up someday, he hadn't had any other thoughts. Now, he felt like he knew. Why can't I even go near him? Fant felt inferiority and respect towards Yi and Wu at the same time. Why could that guy do it, but he couldn't? He also worked that hard. But why? From his younger days, Fant was only satisfied when he was in charge. When he played war games with his friends, he always had to be the commander, and he always had to exceed others when there was group training. It was unthinkable that someone could be in front of him. The throne. Fant only wanted one thing when he was younger, and he lived believing that he could never fall behind in order to become king. He enjoyed having others be envious of him, but he had never thought of looking at others the same way. He just scoffed when people said he was arrogant. Then, he met Yi and Wu. In their fight, Fant felt his world crashing down on him. He made a mistake thinking that he was the center of the world. There were countless people in front of him. Still, he worked hard to catch up, and he found himself observing Yi and Wu with respect. He placed Yi and Wu in a position that he never would have when he was younger. But he never caught up to Yi and Wu, he only became more distant. Then as time went on, Fant began to understand. He would sigh saying, "Phew, there he goes again," and thought that there was nothing he could do to catch up. He had given up at some point. That was clearly where things went wrong. Yi and Wu was still a symbol of respect to Fant. He was proud of Yi and Wu for walking that hard path alone, but it wasn't something that he should have given up on. This isn't it. Something lifted Fante's head. It was his desire to win. The emotions that he had thrown away after understanding that he couldn't catch up. Fant ground his teeth. He pressed the inferiority down. Instead, the passion for winning flared up. He wanted to defeat Yi and Wu. "Oppa, I'm going to climb the tower." Adora, who had been silently watching Yi and Wu next to him, suddenly spoke. Fant woke up from his thoughts and turned to his little sister. What was Adora thinking as she looked at Yi and Wu? It was clear that she had a change of heart like him. Her eyes with insight open were deep. For a moment, Fant thought he was looking at his mother, the psychic medium. One thing he knew for sure was that he wasn't thinking the same thing as her. Fant was feeling a desire to win, and Adora's newfound mind probably stemmed from love. However, Fant didn't ask what she was thinking. Like he had his own thoughts, she could cherish her own. All he could do was silently cheer her on as her brother. That was why he nodded his head without saying much, and Adora turned around, saying, "Thanks." Wrong, the divine magic sword in Adora's arm cried out. He could feel a heat coming from it. A while after Adora left, Fant silently watched Yi and Wu and Galliard, then whipped his body around and headed somewhere. The head elder pushed up his glasses and frowned. "What? Your blood lightning, please give it to me." He was speaking confidently like he had come to take back something he left at a pawn shop. The head elder started at Fant and put down the book he was reading. He thought he would be able to rest because the martial king was quiet, but his son was saying nonsense now. He wanted to slap the face that was similar to the martial king's, but he controlled himself and asked Fant a question with his eyes squinted. "Are you saying that you know what the blood lightning is?" "I do." Fant nodded. Blood lightning, the symbol of the blood light philosopher. It was a martial weapon that came from the divination of the Cheongram family, the lightning control. Fante's feelings of competitiveness towards Yi and Wu had turned into a desire to become stronger. This was the result of Fante's thinking. However, the head elder snorted like there was no way he would give it away. "No, you don't know." "No, I do know." "No, you don't know." Fant was about to say something again but just closed his mouth. The head elder smiled. He was looking down on Fant. It was a mocking smile. "Should I tell you the truth?" Fant nodded his head. "You're weak." Fante's eyes widened. His back stiffened. He clenched his fists. Quote! Quote. The head elder continued to mock him. "Don't think of denying it. I'm right, aren't I? Your brothers. Yeah, most of them are weaker than you. But there are also those who are stronger than you. Don't forget that your mother and sister played a large part in you being a likely candidate for the throne." Quote. Even though you're famed for being the Cheongram siblings, there are a lot of monsters in the world. The village itself is full of warriors stronger than you, and there are many more others in the tower. Fant clenched his teeth. However, the head elder didn't stop there. "And one more thing, you're not even smart." Quote. Fante's red eyes shook. It was what people said about him often, that he was simple and aggressive. However, that was only when people judged him nicely. In other words, it meant that he was stupid and he didn't think things through. The head elder was silently working hard in his office, but there actually wasn't anyone as arrogant as him. Even the martial king had to bend to him. Also, the head elder was someone who could afford to act like that. I'm strong, smart, he's dead and not here anyone, but even the Black Dawn of the Devil Amy couldn't say anything to me. Who do you think cleaned up this archive? Who helped your father get to where he is now? The head elder definitely wasn't emanating any particular aura, but Fant felt like he was being stepped on. He felt like someone was gripping his heart. It was getting harder to breathe. His heart almost beat out of his chest, and his clothes were drained with sweat. The blood-light philosopher, although overshadowed by the martial king, he was still a pillar of the tribe. Also, he had shown that he still had it to the world. Even Waltz had to bend to him. Fant grit his teeth and spit out his words. You, sir. That's right. The head elder arrogantly nodded his head and continued. And the blood lightning symbolizes me. It's something I earned from fighting my entire life, tumbling, thinking, learning, losing, then fighting again, attempting, waiting, and waiting. Blood lightning is me. The head elder began to frown. His crumpled face expressed his rage. And what? The rage of a beast shook the atmosphere around it. Fant couldn't tell if the atmosphere was shaking or if he was shaking. A guy who's not strong or smart wants something of mine. Return. It was a strict order. It was also a warning not to covet something that wasn't his when he didn't deserve it. Faden's shoulders trembled. He felt like he was falling down a cliff, like when he had first met Yin Wu. His world was crumbling again. The last of his pride was destroyed. He glared at the head elder with red eyes. Normally, he would have thrown a tantrum and kicked the door to leave, but Fant bowed his head. Please give me a chance. Chapter 257 Growth 7. The head elder widened his eyes in surprise. The arrogant, self-absorbed prince had bowed his head. Did this child know what that meant? What had made him this desperate? Actually, the head elder judged Fant highly, despite what he had said. He said that Fant was simple, but it only looked that way because Fant was direct and honest. In fact, Fante's ability to differentiate and judge things was outstanding. Also, if he wasn't qualified, he wouldn't have been chosen to be the successor of the throne. The same went with what he said about being weak. The head elder and the martial king were geniuses, so it wasn't fair to compare Fant to them. Fant was actually one of the most skilled. There was almost no one around his age who achieved the level of the martial arts he had. There was just one reason why he was mocking him. It was to test his patience. Patience was the most important part of Mugong. When your growth stopped, when you hit a wall, and when you lost in a battle, you had to be able to look back at and reflect on your actions. If you threw a tantrum and ran away because it was too hard, you could never grow. This was especially the case for a skill like blood lightning. The skill involved many difficult concepts because it was a Mugong that the head elder himself had made, and deep self-restraint was needed to learn it. You would only be a book with a nice cover if you didn't have patience. The problem was that the Fant that the head elder had observed until now was too impulsive. It was unacceptable to the composed head elder. However, he's changed. The head elder examined Fant with flashing eyes. The normal Fant probably would have kicked the door open to leave or lay down on the ground to throw a tantrum, but he was still standing with his head bowed. The head elder was silent for a long time. He wanted to check if Fant was just playing games or if he had really changed. In that long silence, Fant didn't move. That was how desperately he needed the blood lightning. It wasn't just because of his inferiority and desire to defeat Yin Wu. He still respected him, and Fant had been genuine when he said he would become Yin Wu's teeth. Fant and Yin Wu couldn't be split apart anymore. And with all these emotions, there was one conclusion Fant came to. Strength. He grit his teeth. I need strength. Like what Yin Wu said about becoming stronger, Fant knew that he would be nothing if he kept going like this. Adora agreed with him. However, unlike Adora, who would gain strength through climbing the floors, Fant needed a more substantial and destructive strength. He couldn't forget the blood lightning he saw the head elder use on the battlefield. The influence the threat of blood lightning gave was something he wanted. This was why he wasn't going to move no matter what the head elder said. Pride, arrogance. Were those things important? They were something only people with strength could have. Some time passed. The head elder sighed, shaking his head. Fant realized that he had received a chance. However, He felt like it wasn't going to be easy, knowing the head elder's personality. And of course, fine, if you're this stubborn, there's nothing I can do. However, you have to prove yourself. Fant lifted his head. His back hurt from bending over for a long time, but his eyes were sparkling. What should I prove? Your qualification. The head elder's gaze was sunken beyond his glasses. I'm talking about your qualification to become my successor. Qualification. Fant was deep in thought as he left the head elder's residence. Proving his qualification to become the head elder's successor, he didn't understand what that meant. It probably wasn't something the head elder just said to make Fant leave. The head elder wanted to see a reason to give Fant the blood lightning. A reason to become his successor. Fant looked down at his open hands. The head elder was the oldest person in the tribe, but he was also Fante's great-great-uncle. He was the man who raised the martial King Nyu to where he was and led the Cheongram family to prosperity. The motif of blood lightning control, was something Fant enjoyed using. That meant he had the most basic qualification. It would be easier to learn blood lightning on top of what he already knew. Then that meant, pause. Fant stopped in his tracks. Shouldn't I get the lightning soul first? Lightning soul. It was what you earned after mastering lightning control. Your lightning and body became one, and you could open the path to strong energy. Blood lightning was a strong energy Mugong. Of course, lightning soul was the next most basic condition. Fant felt like his mind became clearer. The path that he found after its many twists and turns was the same. Individual training. Lightning soul was the final result of what users of lightning control could gain. Unlike before, when he didn't know what to do, he now had a clear goal. Fant headed out. There was no time to waste. Ha! Are you saying Fant is doing closed training? Yin Wu panted as he looked at Galliard. What Galliard said as he practiced arrow shadow leap, a skill that rapidly sped one up, piqued his interest. Yeah, I heard he went to the Martial King and insisted for the key to the Myeonbyuk building. Ha. The Myeonbyuk building. Seems like Fant is really determined this time. Yin Wu's eyes became bigger. The Myeonbyuk building was in the deepest parts of the closed training buildings. In there, you had to spend time alone with only a limited amount of food in a 5-pyong area. It was impossible to open the door from the inside, so it wasn't something one easily attempted unless one was very patient. Only people who wanted to train for several years entered it. Fant definitely hadn't gone in there half-heartedly. Also, with the authority of the royal family, he requested to open the martial archives. The elders convened that he was allowed to take 5 different books in with him from the gold archive. It'll probably be hard to see him for the time being. The gold archive was something that only the king or the elders could allow the entrance of. However, members of the royal family could enter at least once in their life freely. It seemed like Fant had used this authority. Like what Galliard said, Fant was definitely determined this time. What kind of expression had he made as he went into the Myeonbyuk building? Yin Wu was curious, but he wasn't planning on visiting him. It was too cringy for each other. Also, there wasn't any need to do that. Yin Wu felt like he knew how Fant felt. The reality of things being easier said than done had probably motivated him. And he took 5 books with him. He'll have to work hard with that temper of his. It's easier for people who have had experience studying to study. Galliard smirked as he replied to Yin Wu. Also, they say Adora began to climb the tower. She left quietly with only a note to the psychic medium, so it seems like she's also pretty determined too. Yin Wu nodded his head. He understood their different decisions. Adora had insight and the Yang sword. It was best for her to raise her insight while using the Yang sword in actual battle. Adora will do well. He was a bit worried about Fant, but his trust in Adora ran very deep. She hadn't shown him much, but he knew that she had many things she kept hidden. If she properly used her divine magic sword, it might be hard for him to win against her. Yin Wu lightly shook the dust off his body and got ready again. If the 2 siblings were that determined, he couldn't fall behind. Losing to them will be an embarrassment as the eldest. With those thoughts, Yin Wu kicked off from the ground again. Kwang, Swek. As soon as Yin Wu moved, time flowed quickly again. You have learned about the way to control consciousness. You have learned arrow shadow leap. Your proficiency in the skill, Shunpo, has increased dramatically. 89.1%. And like that, you have earned a large hint about circulating consciousness. You have learned single river crossing. Your proficiency in the skill, Shunpo, has increased dramatically. 95.2%. Training continued. You have learned how to use consciousness subconsciously. You have learned tension teleportation. Your proficiency in the skill, shunpo, has increased 99.6%. And the time came to bear the fruit of his training. You have completely assimilated consciousness into your body. Extrasensory perception and your body are being synchronized. You have learned body transpose. Your proficiency in the skill, shunpo, has dramatically increased 121.6%. Congratulations! The proficiency of the skill, shunpo, has reached the max. You have gained a method of babuk. All stats related to the skill will increase. Additional stats are being given. Strength has increased by 15. Dexterity has increased by 19. You have gained a new understanding related to your skill. A superior skill is being opened. The skill, slide, has been created. Your proficiency of the skill, slide, has dramatically increased and succeeded in reaching the max. You have gained a method of shinbup. A new skill is being searched for considering the player's stats. The superior skill, light trace, has opened. You have earned a method of kyungong. The proficiency of the skill, light trace, dramatically. It is receiving the influence of your traits, demonic dragon body, and monk. A superior skill is opened. Wind path, numbering 80. Proficiency, 0.0%. Summary: the only friend of the dark elves, who had to live in the darkness away from the world, was the wind. The wind doesn't stay in one place and doesn't differentiate. Its flow is always free, and the dark elves desire to take after the wind. If you linger around the wind like the dark elves, you might find a path that you haven't been able to see before. Pathfinding: every time you use the skill, different skill paths will be shown to you randomly. At the end of every path, there is a different result, and you can see from at least 2 to 5 of them. The higher your proficiency, the more paths you can see. You currently own 3 winds: Zephyr, Gust, North Wind. Eye of the Storm: you can gather the wind around you and explode it. The storm can heavily damage your surroundings. The skill, Draconic Eyes, can be connected for clearer pathfinding. The number of paths you can see increase and their power is amplified. The skill, Spirit of the Abyss, can be connected, and the blessing of the wind spirit will follow. Walk: the changes came suddenly. He had been practicing controlling his consciousness and the body transpose. Suddenly, his draconic eyes burst open, and he could see 10 times more flaws than before. Yian-Wu felt his world spinning. In the slowed-down world of time difference, he got himself together, and he was able to see a whole new world. The flaws were flowing like rivers. It was only a slight difference, but they all had different colors from each other. Some were dark, and some were light. There were even some that were large and small, and they covered the entire world. All Yian-Wu had seen until now were flaws that were bound together like string. It was the first time he saw them flowing like this. Yian-Wu realized that this was the wind. The wind that he had felt only through his senses was something that he could now see through his eyes. That wasn't all. Like how he could see the wind, Yian-Wu could see his own body from another perspective. His senses were completely different. Yian-Wu felt more with his physical senses that were connected to consciousness, and he skillfully adjusted this. His heavy body felt light as a feather. He could feel the wind on his fingertips. Some parts were soft, and some were rough. Not only did he feel the wind, he could feel things beyond it. Also, Yian-Wu was able to control these all naturally. He spread his hand out. The wind naturally rolled into his hand in a round form. He blew consciousness into the form. HRSH. The form flared up with fire. Magic body, his body, consciousness, and flaws. Everything moved easily. Just a few hours ago, he could only connect them by focusing, but there was no need for that anymore. Congratulations. You've opened wind eyes. Just then, Galliard came down from above him. He patted Yian-Wu's shoulders. In our tribe. Yeah. You would be a hunter, now. It must have been hard for you since you're not part of our tribe. You've done well. Yian-Wu shook his head. If it wasn't for you, I couldn't have even attempted it. It was the truth. He couldn't even imagine how long it would have taken without Galliard. His brother's first teacher had taught Yian-Wu so many things. He had generously passed the legacy of the Dark Elves down to him. Thanks to that, Yian-Wu was able to break down the wall that had been blocking him. You have earned the title, Dark Elves Hunter. Yian-Wu was proud of himself as he read the message. Also, connecting Wind Path to Draconic Eyes and Spirit of the Abyss had been so easy. Because of them, considering the amplified effects it brought along with it, it wasn't just a numbering skill. This is almost an authority. It would probably be a mid-authority. Yi and Wu believed that this wind path would change him like the wave of fire had. How about trying it out? Yi and Wu nodded his head and stretched his hand out. The magic bayonet wrapped around his hand. He felt things that he never would have without wind eyes. It was hard to explain, but it was like he could feel the emotions of the magic bayonet. Like how he could see the wind with his draconic eyes, he could feel the magic bayonet with his senses. It was crying, saying to wake it up. It wanted to be released from loneliness. Yi and Wu blew consciousness inside of it to calm it down. His holiness followed after, and magic power flowed from him. The magic bayonet was finally able to release its vestige. In that moment, Yi and Wu felt like he became one with his sword. He was the magic bayonet, and the magic bayonet was him. Consciousness had completely synchronized them. It was the moment that his body became one his sword. Ching! The magic bayonet cried out. Aura formed around it. It was sword strengthening. Yi and Wu lifted it powerfully to the right. With this, wouldn't he be able to replicate the palgui that was imprinted in his head?